All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast, but the QA, that's the important part, the question and answer. We like to make this an interactive conversation. I like to hold my podcast on a Monday. Maybe we've got some feels on the ridiculous number of news links that I have actually not included in this week's podcast. I had a list starting this morning. I had like 30 links at one point and went, I just don't think I can pull off a 4-hour show today. So we're going to simplify this a little, but we still have a lot to talk about. This is going to be a supersized show, and especially after last week, I was joking in the pre-show chat, especially after last week, where I was like, "Hey, we didn't really get to do a pajama podcast. Maybe we should take next week light." And then I woke up this morning, you're like, no, I've got a show to put together. We're gonna put a show together. So seeing a great list of names here in the chat, ready to jump in and untangle some of this stuff. These are stories that we've been following up on. These are stories that have been evolving over time. And this is the right crew of people. We're not just gonna sit and get outraged over a headline on social media. We really want to know how all this stuff works, how it all goes down. I'm seeing Suolin, we are so live. We got Coffee Burp with Bionic Scoop saying, one, gotta say scoop. We got Majestic Moose, the most majestic of mooses. We've got happy to finally be back for one of these. I'm so glad to see you in the chat. We've got Simon Says Hypno wishing everyone a happy time zone. Vazikos with a hello there. John Gao wishing us a happy Monday. Suolin also saying I could do a 6-hour stream. Ron GKP saying hello. Of course, Jimmy Fire Dragon, always in the chat. Always love seeing Jimmy, as he might wish people a happy hydration and get this out of the way there. So I also just want to, before we even jump in, I want to send a special shout out. I want to send a special shout out to the folks on the private Discord. If you're a member of the Patreon, patreon.com/somegadgetguy, we keep a little quiet, tucked away community where we all hang out and have a really good time, kind of just talking trash and sharing tech links and stuff. But I have a specific channel for the podcast. And this last week, ER1980, Command Control Device, Walking Black Bear, John Gao, Old Trev, Farhan, just an incredible collection of links. Pacost, P-A-K-0-S-T, just tons and tons and tons. There was an incredible amount of tech news shared, which I basically built this whole week's episode. Command Control Device just jumped in and said, hello. It's like his ears must have been burning because he shared some amazing links. So I'm very bad at crediting when people send me news. I'm trying to do a better job of saying, hey, thanks. That really helps me put the show together because I've got this one Discord feed just full of awesome links and the stuff that folks seem to want to talk about the most. So I hope everybody had a lovely week. This last weekend, I spent, again, a lot of time sort of watching World Cup shenanigans. I don't have a team in this race right now. In years past, I've really been a fan of the dichotomy between like German soccer and Brazilian soccer or football. And this year was kind of disappointing to see like some of these teams that I followed in the past and seen like, I really get excited about what kind of strategies they bring to World Cup play just kind of completely fall apart. So this is now kind of just for funsies for me. I have no idea who's going to make it to the end. The England-Norway game was a little bit of a heartbreaker. I was really hoping to see Norway capitalize on some of their setups and positions. And unfortunately, just a couple moments in that game came down to sort of pushing the game in England's favor. But it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top between England and Argentina. And and Spain, France, again, just two powerhouse squads. We could end up with another French Argentinian World Cup final. I don't have. Is anyone rooting? Is there a you've got to root for this team for the for the fate of humanity rests in France winning the World Cup? I don't know. The stakes for me are very, very low, but the play has been amazing, and seeing so many of these games go to like extra time and sometimes penalty kicks has just been absolutely incredible athleticism. Simon says, Hypno, national footballing identities are becoming more homogenous. I guess. It's just interesting to me too. It's just like the tone that's getting to see a little bit more firsthand, being one of the host countries. This has just been a really weird World Cup, I think, in seeing like games being played in Mexico, across the United States, games up in Canada, getting a little bit closer, like Americans took pride in hosting, but you could also see like as soon as the US men's national team was out, that like interest plummeted locally around us. Like, who's talking about the World Cup anymore? There's such fair weather football fans. It's like, oh, well, our team's not in it anymore. He's like, yeah, but we're still hosting. There's still games Kansas City. That looked really cool, but you could see this huge wave of Argentina supporters there. Anyway. Suolin knew exactly what I was talking about. That would be pass to Haaland that didn't happen was the game. I feel that, especially in that game, there was the goal kick that hit one of the cameras that should have absolutely have been examined by VAR. And then also, I'm not. I don't know. So when Norway scored a second goal, and then that goal got overturned because of the foul, because these players are shoving. To me, that was kind of on the cusp of not a flop. So you see these two players. You've got a Norwegian, you've got a Brit, and they're shoving back and forth, and there are hands on each other, and the Brit shoves two hands into Haaland. I'm not pronouncing his name right, by the way. I know that. And then he shoves back with two hands, and the English player, like, feet over head, falls on the ground. And you're like, he didn't get shoved that hard. But because there was a two-hand push, they called back the corner kick goal. And I feel like that's immediately where all of the wind kind of deflated out of Norway's sails. Now, that's part of the sport. Playing the refs is a major part of the strategy in football. And a more experienced and seasoned squad should have been able to work past that call. But it was still just a moment like, man, that's kind of lame. If you're going to let them mix it up in the penalty box, like, seeing someone acrobatically land like that, to me, doesn't speak of the amount of force that was actually transferred into that human body. I feel like that's not how the human body and gravity and inertia work. But I don't know. It has been interesting. But we are going to get into some tech. I promise. I'm not going to spend the entire podcast talking about sports. But I will say, as a techie, it has been very interesting to me to see how disruptive VAR is to the flow of soccer. Quick tangent. A quick tangent in a quick tangent. I have been very pleased with baseball incorporating more technology. I don't think many people would fight me in this comments if you're a fan of baseball, if you're not a fan of baseball. The inclusion of technology to more accurately call pitches in the game, I think has been a massive net positive and has contributed significantly to the strategy, how strategic baseball is. This is something that hasn't interrupted baseball. It hasn't made baseball slower. It hasn't made baseball more frustrating. It's made baseball better, in my opinion. There's this human element with the umpire, and we've got this system that can now more accurately call balls and strikes when the pitcher throws a ball, if it's a ball or a strike. And now the strategy is not, what catcher can fake a strike better. We call that framing. When you're a catcher, you receive the pitch, and then how you turn your wrist or your arm can pull a pitch maybe right at the corner, right on the outside of your strike zone, that little bit of a pull in or pull up or pull down, especially when the pitch is low, because the umpire cannot see through the catcher to see the moment that the pitch is received. So there was a lot of strategy on how can you make your catcher simulate a strike. And that's actually kind of lame for the game if you think about it. If the pitcher threw a strike, we want it to be a strike. And if the pitcher threw a ball, we want it to be a ball. And that's what moves the game along. That's a major part of the game. Technology has made this way better, in my opinion, because you're not training your catcher to fool the umpire. You're training your catcher to be way more accurate so they can challenge a bad call from the umpire. And I like this system. You get 2 challenges, and there's no official stopping the game to review the footage. It's the players. So if your batter challenges a call from the umpire, if your pitcher challenges a call from the umpire, if your catcher challenges a ball from the umpire, there's a risk they might get the call wrong, and then that team loses one of their challenges. But now this is a major part of the strategy is getting all of your players way more accurate. In fact, a really good catcher should be more accurate at calling balls and strikes than an umpire, because they're literally the ball is flying towards their face. I really don't like the VAR system in soccer, and I think soccer could really learn something from baseball. Instead of the officials letting play commence, then seeing a player still flopping around on the field, and then saying, well, now we've got to review what happened in video, and the whole game just grinds to a halt as we see this like just total stoppage of play. And now we've got to go and see, was this an actual foul? Someone got a yellow card. Now we've got to review it. I really think they should adopt a challenge system. Each team gets 2 challenges. If their challenge is overruled, they lose one of their challenges. If their challenge is approved, they go on. They get to keep their 2 challenges. And that way it's player and coach driven, not officials coming back to see something after the fact, because that thing that happened with Norway. So there's a goal kick, goalie kicks the ball, and it obviously hits one of the cameras that are flying around in the stadium. That should have immediately stopped play. So if you have a challenge system, the coach could have said VAR that. And then the officials would have had to have stopped, look at that play. Oh yeah, you're right. It did hit that camera. Let's take the ball back to the goalie and play commences again. Instead of, well, no one really saw it except for all the people that saw the ball hit the camera. This is why I feel like the style of VAR in soccer is backwards. It's the officials going back to review something arbitrarily. There is no set system for what constitutes a VAR, unless the officials call it. And that to me is where there's a little too much power in the hands of the officials on the field, the refs on the field, and they can significantly drive the direction of a game by, well, if this team is more popular, well, we'll definitely re-examine some of the plays, and if this team is less popular, then I'm not saying it's that outright, that manufactured, that manipulated, but it definitely contributes to the tone of the conversation that you see every single time we're in like major tournaments and FIFA is accused of kind of guiding the narrative on how this play should handle. I think one of the ways that you can equalize that disparity between some teams and others is to give coaches some kind of power on the pitch. I hear they say it's the pitch. Again, this notion that like offsides can happen, if that there's a strategic advantage if a fraction of a millimeter of someone's kneecap is ahead of one of the defenders, that doesn't contribute to the game. That doesn't make the game more strategic. It doesn't make the game better. But like in baseball, these video replay systems and these accuracy systems can absolutely improve the strategy of the game if we use that technology to better purpose. So anyway, oh, I got a lot of comments on this. Maybe we're going to turn this into a sports podcast after all. Bionic Scoop just throwing in there. I can't pull for Argentina ever. We have family friends that are huge Messi fans. So again, it's like, if Argentina wins, I know I can pick up the phone and call Freddie and say, hey man, congratulations. I know I've got that one family in our social circle, and they're the dad is from Argentina, and I'm not pulling for Argentina, but if they win, I know someone I can celebrate with. To me, it's like, what's the excuse for the party? John Gao is a Barca fan, so Argentina and Spain. Seeing Messi winning a second would be unmatched, but they are not in the best shape. And also going into this this next game, they've got a ton of yellow cards. I think strategically, Argentina could lose just because you might end up with a player catching a red on their second yellow. Holland. I've been saying Holland. So bad. I suck at names in general, but especially like Norway, Sweden, those Scandinavian sounds. I just can't. So Suolin, this is what I mean. Oh, so on that goal kick hitting the camera cable, FIFA supposedly released footage of the ball sensor, and apparently it never hit anything, no spike in reading. So you're looking at the ball sensor, but you can see the trajectory of the ball. This is what was so crazy to me, is FIFA saying like, well, we went by the sensor. And then like, I forget what sports channel stream we were watching, and they're like, watch us just paint the ball, and you can see at its peak, it falls in a place that it shouldn't have fallen if we're looking at the curve. And you're like, I get it, but the technology isn't making this better when we're all seeing. So you go back and you video assess. You don't just go by the ball sensor, but by that point, it's too late. So if you had a challenge system where a coach could challenge that, then I think that would have been better. Oh, see, Bionic Scoop, yeah, especially for football. I hate the wild amount of tech that is deciding these games, and it feels to me like it's a crutch. It's a crutch to confirm, and the officials use it inconsistently. At least that's what it looks like to me. Simon says, "Hypno, the VAR tech is amazing. Unfortunately, having idiots in charge of the tech, that doesn't help." And Simon says, Hypno also, it's the same in the Premier League. Crap refs still getting it wrong despite every technological advantage. Suolin, this is why like I know there is a reform that could happen with football. Suolin saying baseball is absolutely peak right now. Next year they may have ABS for checked swings. That would be, see, I think that's better. You're asking to confirm a checked swing with an official who's like down the third baseline. And I get it. I'm farsighted. I could see pretty well, but that's not that can't be consistent. The human apparatus, the eyes and the brain's ability to track information like that is not consistent enough, is not accurate enough. And I think again, baseball is that game of fractions of millimeters, of the wildest specs, like this batter is batting 693 against left-handed pitchers on Tuesdays when the barometric pressure is above this pressure. And you're like, that's what baseball is. Baseball is Moneyball, right? Baseball is numbers and stats and specs and exit velocities and slugger percentages, and like, you know what? To me, it makes perfect sense. Take that out of the hands of an umpire on the third baseline and put it into a system that can more accurately assess this. I think we've gotten to a point where umpires on the field need to be judging the, like getting tagged out, if the ball hits the plate, it just, the human elements of the sport. When we're talking about a human's ability to throw over 90 miles an hour at that distance is testing the limits of human cognition. So an elite athlete trying to hit a baseball is working at their limits. I don't believe umpires can work at those limits over the course of a whole game. A batter might see what? Let's say a power slugger on a team goes full count every single at bat. That means they might see 25 pitches over the course of a game. And you're telling me an umpire can see every pitch over the course of the game and consistently rule on other things too, like a checked swing? I don't believe humans have that capability. So if you got a technology that can say, hey, that was a check swing, that wasn't a check swing, I think that's better for the sport because then it makes that more consistent and it teaches a better strategy to the teams that are trying, like, hey man, you should have taken that pitch. That I think that's better. And it doesn't slow down the sport. It actually makes baseball faster because a baseball game can drag. And especially if there are lots of rules and challenges and umpires and coaches are yelling and all this other stuff, that just drags the game. I like the idea of this, and I feel like soccer could learn some things from baseball. I'm gonna take a little drink of coffee here. Yeah, see, John Gao, exactly. This is what I'm talking about. John says a challenge system would be great. There were a couple of very important challenges in the NBA finals this year. And so like I'm watching the Swiss game, and there's that, when you saw the play happen in real time, it looked like a player tripped like the star forward on the Swiss team. Dude gets a yellow card. And then there's lots of commotion and there's no proper challenge system. It's just, can you argue loud enough? And are the fans on the field getting angry enough that the officials go, okay, we'll take a look? And then they saw it was a total simulation, just an absolute flop of a flop. They rescind the yellow card against the defending player. They give it to the Swiss forward. He'd already had a yellow card. And so he gets red carded out of the game. A challenge system would have made that entire process so much more efficient because everybody on the field that was angrily yelling about this dive, this massive flop that this player took, well, the ref saw it different in that moment, being on the field immediately next to all these players. It just drags the game so much. So anyway, Suolin saying soccer is too traditional to change. It is long overdue for many fundamental changes. But I feel VAR is becoming a major component of high level play, right? We don't have strike zone cameras and sensors in 10U softball. So obviously that's not something that's going to filter down in the sport. We're still teaching our girls how to frame as catchers because we know we can work 10U umpires. We know, I've seen so many like, man, that was about to hit home plate, but when she caught the ball and she pulled her arm forward and tucked her elbow in, that looked like a strike from the umpire's perspective. And all the parents out in the bleachers are going, oh, when they get that strike. So we're still doing all that. But when we're talking top level play, Premier League play, ML, not ML, MLS, Major League Soccer, when we're talking about every country's highest level where a VAR system is being implemented, all you need to do is give it a challenge system. You can't give a challenge system if there's no footage to challenge. So the whole build up to that would still be the same internationally. But once you get to that highest level and you're playing in tournaments and you're going international, you've got to adjust your team strategies and you got to give coaches this tiniest bit of power to influence the game. And I think that would be a huge benefit for this sport that I love, but I don't keep up with as much as I should. All right, we should probably talk. Again, we've been talking about tech. This is a tech podcast. I want to knock out just. Let me get this out right. I want to get just a little housekeeping out of the way. I had a couple videos come out. Here, let me get this. Let me screen share. Why is this not? I did not set this up well. It took me so long just to get the run of show that I was like scrambling up to the last minute to like put in all the links and organize the links that we're going to talk about. So here we go. This one was kind of fun. I have not chatted with the folks at XReal for a while, and this one was kind of interesting to me. I mentioned this in the review. Sorry, the link is XBXA01 Plus. This is a terrible start to a title for a link or a video. XBXA01 Plus review: more affordable XR glasses from XReal. So, I haven't been recommending XReal as aggressively to my family and friends. My mom thinks these glasses are cool. My uncle, the uncle I talk about, who has an Xperia phone, he got a pair of Rokids. Just like there are these little glimmers, like, oh, in my family, folks are starting to take this idea more seriously. I think a portable monitor is the best accessory you can buy for the tech you already own, and it can last a really long time. Like a good portable monitor should outlast multiple phones, tablets, and laptops. I've got portable monitors that are older than Lex. They still work. They still do the gig just fine. It's a very simple accessory that is wildly compatible with multiple computers, phones, tablets, cameras, game consoles, etc. So the most exotic version of that is a portable monitor you put on your face. But I haven't been recommending XReal as much because while I believe they are the bleeding edge of this tech, their most recent pairs of glasses have been incredible technologically, but also very expensive. So they've spun off a side company called XBX, which one is going to mess them up because a lot of search is going to autocorrect that to Xbox. Like if you're doing the SEO on this, XBX is way less popular than XBOX. So most search engines are going to assume you typoed what you were searching for. But this is very critical for the brand because this is a more streamlined, less expensive, less cool. There's less tech going on in these glasses, but you need an option to give people an on-ramp. And right now, Ray Neo is probably, I think, the best on-ramp for this tech. So the Ray Neo Air 4 that I just recently did some shorts on was on sale 2 weeks ago for like $250. That is getting to a price where it is competing directly against the nicer traditional portable monitors. I mean, it's still more expensive than a nicer traditional portable monitor, but it's so much closer. You could take a bit more of a risk if you thought, hey, I really want a portable monitor. Let's try one that sits on my face. XReal really needed to be in this space. So this is a really important product, even though I know this isn't my favorite XReal headset. It's not the best XReal headset. They make better XReal headsets, but they needed something that you could at least recommend to folks that doesn't feel like it's buying in at the top of the market. I don't think that's ever a good strategy. I'm sitting on headphone reviews right now. I just did a review on a $1,700 cabled headphone, and I have to say in that review, if you're not experienced with headphones, don't jump to the higher end of the market. Don't jump into the deep end of the pool if you don't know how to swim. If you know how to swim and you know what you're looking for, the XBX probably isn't going to be it for you. But if you've never experienced this kind of face technology before, you need something. So if you want to know the rest of my thoughts on that, that's in the video. That's in the XBX. Yeah, command control device. Even most AIs will put Xbox as more likely to be the next word than XBX. Again, it's so funny to me, like, you just call it an X reel. I don't know, like, I feel like they're worried about watering down the X reel brand, but XBX stands for X by X reel. So even if you expand this as an acronym, it's even worse because X is the name of Twitter. So it's Twitter by X reel. This is not a good name. As much as I want to be like, hey guys, X-Real, like, I'm really big fans of your products. This was not, and it's that hip, cool, we're a lifestyle, and people got to know what, and real cool, flashy, animated, people at the beach and people at a party and a nightclub because we're youth. And to me, it just felt so much like, I don't know if anyone here is old like me and was alive when Toyota launched the Scion brand, and like, yeah, because we're hip young people, so we want hip young cars that look like little weird Japanese cubes, and we're youth mobiles. And like, young people don't want that. Young people want Audis and BMWs and Corvettes and cool cars. Old people loved Scion. Old people love, this is an affordable vehicle made by Toyota, and it's decently reliable, and it's inexpensive, and it gets me from point A to point B, and it's kind of adorable. It's like a little egg cube car. Young people didn't want that at all. Young people don't want, hey, you're young and you're poor, have these glasses. They want the nice glasses. And then the other video I got out, this is in early access on the Patreon, but it will be going live sometime this week. Fosse Audio MD3 Mag DAC review, the fun magnetic headphone DAC. And I got a little picture of it here. It's this cute little rectangle that has a big screen on it. And when you're playing music, it can do things like the screen can look like a cassette tape, a little spinning cassette tape, or a record if you've got vinyl, if it's an album spinning in a circle. It's just an adorable little MagSafe compatible DAC that just snaps onto the back of your phone. Just really, really cute. So the folks at Fosse sent over their full kit. They have some really interesting open IEMs. I know open IEMs are a thing. I don't tend to lean towards open IEMs. Professionally, I always needed isolation more than I needed a more natural soundscape for my IEMs. So that to me was just kind of a nice little shift, something outside my normal comfort zone. But the DAC itself is a really interesting idea in trying to make this a little more fun, a little more broad. It's a little consumer friendlier. Maybe it's not the best audiophile performance that you can get at this price, but it is interestingly more accessible and better designed for people to use it. And I think there are some really good ideas there that if you want to treat your ears better, that there's good hardware that we can do that with. Oh, JGJ, Scion are the hidden gem of used cars, and I like the bigger cube car. What was that? The XB? Was it the XB that was the cube car? I I I never really felt that strongly about them, but to me it's the point is the marketing. Is so often you get this "Hey fellow kids" vibe. And I get a "Hey fellow kids" vibe when I think back to the early days of Scion marketing, that they were trying so hard to be aggressive and hip and cool, and that's not like, it rarely works. It doesn't feel genuine. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and put a pin in housekeeping there because I've gone on way too long. Um, we've got a ton of news to chew through. Everything that we've talked about, minus my thoughts on the VAR system in soccer. All of the show notes, all of the housekeeping, all of the news links and articles can be found on this week's blog post on somegadgetguy.com. Of course, there will be the video replay and the audio replay, all your favorite video podcasting services. Always appreciate people who are sharing those links, reviewing the podcast on your favorite podcast services, and of course on Patreon, patreon.com/somegadgetguy. I do just like a slightly more cleaned up, edited, streamlined version of the podcast for how long this goes. So starting us off, I've got a pair of FCC stories. Now, I used to really host FCC topics because I liked showing the differences in political administrations to say, hey, there is a practical difference if you vote Republican or if you vote Democrat. And one of the ways that this plays out are in commissions like the FCC. If you care about how this space is regulated, this matters a great deal. As opposed to just voting for senators and feeling like the political process is co-opted. Who we give regulatory power to is a really big deal. So I'm going to juxtapose these two stories right back to back. And if you have any thoughts on the FCC, definitely drop into this live chat and let me know. But I'm going to move through this because these are always the stories that y'all go silent because you kind of don't seem to care. It's like you're fine with this presidential administration just saying you have no rights and the telecommunications landscape should be able to wreck your life. And no one seems to have any strong feelings on that. It's really kind of a you problem. So screen sharing this right here, caught this from PC Mag, and unfortunately I ended up pulling the MSN link, so that's not great. But FCC approves Reflect Orbital's space mirror satellite that astronomers hate. On Thursday, the FCC granted California-based Reflect Orbital permission to launch and operate the satellite in low Earth orbit using the requested radio spectrum. The reflected light from the satellite is supposed to span an area about 3 miles wide on the ground. So this is a startup that is gonna fly satellites into space to illuminate the Earth at night. So there's a lot of environmental pushback to this. And their business plan is to fly constellations of these that can turn night into day. And there are obvious issues with this, like blinding drivers and pilots and wrecking astronomers' equipment and upsetting nature. And I can't, for the life of me, understand why this is a business model that a company is trying to engage in. Because yet again, anything that you do in low Earth orbit is also going to be horrifically expensive because these satellites continuously fall out of the sky. And their business model is we want to operate this at scale and put tons of satellites up in the air. And the FCC has approved the first test satellite because there's no way to know that one test satellite will really be problematic, you see. That's the FCC's reasoning. The FCC is ignoring that the company is stating that they're going to go on to fly a massive constellation of these let's reflect light onto dark parts of the planet. They're allowing the first tests because they just don't have any data to suggest that this would be harmful. And when people complain that it might be harmful, they're complaining about a constellation of those satellites, which we haven't seen yet. So we can't extrapolate from one satellite. We have to we just can't do anything. We're the FCC. We can't say no. It's going to be a satellite, sends out radio signals and stuff like that. And for some reason, it's got a giant mirror that's going to shine light down on the planet at nighttime. Well, there's no way for us to know that that could have any impact. So we have to let them do it. And all these people who are complaining, I'm still pretending to be the FCC. All these people who are complaining about it are complaining about what it might be like if there are lots of satellites. So we just don't know. But the company is saying we want to fly lots of satellites. I just can't. This is from the FCC. The Communications Act states that it is the policy of the United States to encourage the provision of new technologies and services to the public. And Reflex Orbital's demonstration satellite is an example of a potentially groundbreaking technology that the Commission has found is in the public interest to support. This is from the article. But on the more controversial aspects of the satellite, the FCC said the concerns around Reflex Orbital's solar reflector are, quote, unrelated to the Commission's role in authorizing the use of radio frequency spectrum. And even if the Commission had authority to review and condition these operations, these harms are unlikely to occur. Quote, independently, we find that any such risks are outweighed by the public interest benefits of authorizing communications to support testing of the technology in a limited, short duration manner to inform whether there are longer term benefits from an expanded use of this technology. We have plenty of examples of satellites that can send radio signals between other satellites and back down to the planet that don't shine light pollution all over the planet. And there's just nothing the FCC can do. They're in charge of this, but we're not an environmental commission. So this is an example of something the FCC is going to put through. They're great with this. Yet another, just like I really feel, from having been potentially excited about SpaceX and satellite data, to me, it just increasingly looks like a never-ending scam. If we, it serves a benefit when you're on an airplane and you get better Wi-Fi on an airplane. Cool. But all these promises about it revolutionizing rural communications, of having more mobile communications, of having these better capabilities, all of that seems like an unsustainable mess, because you have to keep flying satellites up into space. If you spent that money rolling copper out to more rural areas where they could get the bare minimum high speed broadband support, you would pay a little, like you would pay some upfront. That would be expensive, but the maintenance on that is way less over a short period of time than constantly flying satellites up into space. It just seems like the scam, the grift is, how quickly can you dig into the government's pockets for taxpayer money and still not really offer a better service than what could have been achieved with a more practical solution. But it sounds real cool because we're doing satellites, and these satellites have mirrors on them. So the FCC is borking us there. This next article, I couldn't find anyone else reporting on this with the same level of detail and scrutiny. For the first time in a really, really long time, we've got an article from The Verge on the podcast. This is written up by Sean Hollister. The FCC is cracking down on DJI tech that dodged the foreign drone ban. So basically, the FCC is saying we can't do anything about comically evil villain space mirrors. But, you know, if your gimbal camera has Wi-Fi in it, well, we got to shut that down, because that's the same technology that goes into a drone, and drones are bad if they come from DJI. Even though I still haven't found any compelling evidence to suggest that DJI is supporting any kind of military initiative outside of any other company that would make this kind of consumer electronics. I, I I feel like this is kind of another Huawei situation, where this is just a popular Chinese company and they're just gonna block any kind of sales of this because they can. So I don't know if y'all remember, but when DJI got slapped with that drone ban, and there were a lot of these other accessories, the gimbal cameras and the hardware, the accessories, things like that, were also kind of called into question. We saw a couple of these other companies pop up, like Extra. and Sky Rover that were sending products to the United States that looked very similar to products that we might have seen from a company like DJI. So now the FCC is making sure they're going to do their due diligence and protect the American consumer from companies like Extra and Sky Rover. Your tax dollars are going to flying up giant space mirrors and preventing you from shopping competitive consumer electronics. That's what the FCC's mandate is now. If there's an Extra action camera, XTRA, because they're hip and they're cool, they're extra, and they crack that camera open and they see Wi-Fi components that look like they could have come from DJI, or they see any type of tech that looks like it could have come from DJI, now those parts and pieces are going to get banned too. So obviously this was a bigger deal, folks that were looking at companies like Sky Rover, because again, if you couldn't get your DJI drone and you still wanted a really good drone, there were these alternative companies popping up that you might have been able to do that. That obviously is the big hit, but now it's still going to filter its way down into just sort of general consumer electronics that I still have not seen good data to suggest they pose any kind of significant or direct threat to encourage this level of security blockade. I don't know. I mean, like if this was a bummer for you and now you're just going to go get a Luna, or maybe you should just get a really good gimbal for your smartphone. That's the chilling effect that the FCC is trying to employ on the competitive consumer electronics landscape. So it's pretty good. Sorry, this is from the last article. I've got to pull this up here, from Vazikos. But what if a billionaire wanted to do a wedding with good light at night? Why do you hate billionaires getting to wreck the environment for their own purposes and needs? They're just like every other people that have multiple yachts and can destroy the environment. Simon says, Hypno, James Bond will return in Daybringer. Majestic moves. Come to think of it, wasn't this an exact villain plot in a Bond film? It was Die Another Day. I feel very comfortable in calling the Space Mirror plan an evil genius, a cartoonishly evil villain Space Mirror plan. It is so stupid. And we have to do this dumb game of, well, we've never seen anything exactly like it before to have legislated against evil genius space mirrors. So we have to we've got to do our due diligence. And that's not true. Think about how hard it is to get some plan through like your municipal zoning commission. We just want to dig trenches for fiber. That's like a 20-year endeavor in California bureaucracy, because all the people that want to do the work and put the fiber lines in have to jump through every regulatory hoop and environmental hoop and impact study. And here at the national level, giant evil genius space mirrors, well, they can't prove that they won't destroy the environment, but I guess we just need to let them do it. That's the BS. That's why we always have this like lopsided legal problem. At some point, we need to start telling tech companies, you need to be responsible for cleaning up your own messes. You need to be responsible for generating your own electricity. And you need to be responsible for proving to us that you can do these things. If it's Meta polluting water supplies, or a couple of the AI companies that we're going to be talking about next in terms of electricity usage, it's not on us to prove your business model is dirty. It's on the company to prove that your business model is clean. And we can't seem to crest that in our regulations and in our laws, because we can't put any barriers on business. We have to let all those poor businesses do everything that they want, and then we'll figure out if there's a problem. And like I was talking with Whitney Ray DeBona from Drug Watch, it's like our legal system is just so heavily reactionary, and it takes so long to challenge this stuff in court. It's like we need to start building up our legal system's immune system to this type of ass hattery. Because everyone here commenting on this seems to acknowledge, yeah, there are massive problems with this kind of deployment. But it hasn't been deployed yet, so you can't say that. You can't say for certain. But their plan is turn night into day. Yeah, but that could be good. In what world? I digress. Let me take another drink of coffee. We got to move on. All right. So that's your FCC won't let me be me. So let me see news of the week. I have to reiterate, if you would like to see some government commissions and some government agencies once again backtrack on terrible corporate policy and start working in the interests of citizens instead of massive corporations, you have to vote liberal. You don't want politics in your tech news, but everyone's pissed off about the price of game components, consoles, PC parts. Everyone's pissed off about AI data centers and electricity and the massive harm being done to the environment. Everyone's pissed off about how all your data is up for sale from the ISP that you do business with. And the only solutions are not voting Republican. As soon as we can have that, we can go back to not talking about politics when we can spend the next 10 years with more reasonable, earnest people in these positions, undoing all the damage of the Republicans. Are you bristling right now because I'm talking politics? Then do something about it. If you just sit back and complain that your next PlayStation is going to be too expensive, congratulations. You're talking about politics, and we got to be able to move on. So, just a couple little cases here. OpenAI, kind of in some hot water. I'm not going to read through a ton of this. This is written up by Ashley Bellinger over at Ars Technica. OpenAI may have made a fatal misstep in copyright fight with news orgs. So we can see that the AI bubble is starting to find some market corrections, because here's another example of, we can't regulate businesses. We have to let them do everything that they want and maybe get successful. But if they're not successful, then we can start going after them legally. So the idea of OpenAI was, let's steal everyone's content on the internet and then train AI models to use that content for free. And then we'll make all the money, and all the people who did the work are going to be chumps. Well, in a number of these lawsuits that OpenAI is facing, we're starting to find out that OpenAI is manipulating a lot of the information that should have been sent on disclosure. They're deleting chat and data logs that would supply these court cases with the information to properly rule on what's going down in this arena. And they've just generally been really scummy. So the thing I love about the investigative journalism that happens at Ars Technica is this is a very well researched and linked article. Like if I just scroll this, like, I don't want to sit here and read the whole thing for you. This is an incredible piece written up by Ashley. And so I'm going to ask people go and read it. But it's hilarious how bad OpenAI is at mounting any kind of practical defense legally to these charges and allegations. That isn't just, well, what if we corrupt our data logs? Or what if we just delete communication between team members at OpenAI and we just don't provide it as disclosure? And we're still pretending that there's like an earnest court case here. And this is another example where, hey, you're in this lawsuit. We're talking about copyright. We're talking about how your company stole all this information and you just deleted all this info. You're guilty. I'm sorry. Like, we can talk due process till we're blue in the face. We can talk about the rules and the ethics of our legal system. But at some point, you've also got to say you are a non-earnest participant. And people made these decisions. Those people need to be held in contempt of court. And those people need to start serving some jail time. We've done it before. This is not like a crazy assessment. Like, there was the Huawei executive that had to serve jail time because we were found industrial espionage was a part of Huawei's business practices. Huawei absolutely needed market corrections on how their executives behaved. And that to me is still different than saying their consumer electronics division needed to be scuttered because, oh, security threats, because America. Like, again, this is why this stuff is so much more complicated than just Huawei good or China bad. You know, like this is hilarious that we're still going through, oh, what does this mean for the court case? Does this mean that OpenAI is going to have a hard time when the judge rules on this? Yeah. How are people not in jail? Someone lies under oath. A lawyer uses AI to draft some kind of legal argument, and it turns out the AI hallucinated. That lawyer should be disbarred. That lawyer lied to the court. That is conduct unbecoming a lawyer. Here, your executives are defending themselves against these allegations of copyright and theft and infringement, and then they just delete evidence. So those humans, there's always a digital fingerprint on who did it, and you could get someone lower level at OpenAI to flip on an executive, and that executive needs to be brought up on tampering, evidence tampering, collusion. That executive needs to be in jail. I'm so done pretending like we still need to go through the whole we just can't know if this is going to be a good business model. We need to see. We can't regulate it. If we regulate it, we'll smother it. Good. We should. I hate getting dark, but man, this business model should have been dealt with by now. Similarly, because OpenAI is scammy, I feel like that's legally defensible, right? Me just saying it's a bunch of grifts and scams, and now they're going after tax dollars. They're going to sell a stake of OpenAI to the federal government because they've run out of other chumps to squeeze money out of. This would be the worst time for another major lawsuit. Again, I feel like people get numb to lawsuits. I was talking to Whitney Ray DeBona about Roblox, and most people I talk to know of a lawsuit that Roblox is going through. And I think they assume that when they see other headlines about a lawsuit, that it's the same lawsuit. But there are now over 160 lawsuits being coordinated by multiple states and attorneys general against Roblox. That is the growing scope of what this looks like as a legal maneuver. So when I say OpenAI is facing a lawsuit about copyright, that's one lawsuit, and there are a lot of others. And again, it's just really unfortunate timing for OpenAI that there's another lawsuit coming down the pipe, but this one is likely to get a bit more conversation and traffic because it's from Apple. Apple sues OpenAI alleging trade secret theft, says scheme was at every level. And that's a quote. This is coming by way of CNBC, written up by Kif Leswing and Mackenzie Sigalos. Key points. Apple has sued OpenAI in federal court in Northern California, alleging trade secrets. The iPhone maker alleges that the AI lab took Apple's intellectual property in order to develop its own consumer hardware. And it's a shocking reversal for the two companies, which entered into a high-profile partnership in 2024. Apple on Friday sued OpenAI in federal court, saying the artificial intelligence lab took the iPhone maker's intellectual property in order to develop its own hardware. This is just the first three paragraphs are just the keynotes. Let me scroll down. There was something else in here. Apple alleged that OpenAI's hardware chief, Tang Tan, who is a former Apple vice president, has directed Apple employees interviewing at OpenAI to share Apple's secrets as part of the interviewing process. Tan is named as a defendant in the suit. Apple alleged that OpenAI coached departing Apple employees in how to evade security processes when leaving the iPhone maker, and that Chang Lu, a former employee who joined OpenAI, stole an Apple laptop. Lu is also named as a defendant in the suit. So this is hilarious to me on a couple of levels. One, OpenAI sucks. So I'm no big Apple fan or defender. I think it is hilarious. I think it is awesome. And I think it is of the most grotesque hypocrisy, because literally a year ago we were talking about Apple stealing intellectual property for the Apple Watch. They stole tech that went into like tracking heart rate and tracking health, those sensors, that data. They stole that. They were a judge ruled against them. They were thieves. But look at what happens if some of Apple's intellectual property is siphoned off by another company. Oh, we've got to defend our intellectual property. We've got to defend our IP, guys. This is a real big deal. You can't go stealing from Apple, and they're going to get a ton more sympathy here. Now, the company that developed all that tech for the Apple Watch, they got screwed. And then after they after their case was decided in their favor, Apple dumped tons of money into lobbying Washington D.C. And now we're having this debate as to whether or not health tech can even be copyrighted, can even be patented. Is it a benefit for people if a company makes an incredible gadget that can help manage health and then they put a patent on it? Isn't that bad for people? And now here's Apple really viciously, oh, we're going to go and protect our IP against OpenAI. And it's just swinging levels of like, I don't support Apple. I think Apple needs a massive market and regulatory correction in their business practices. But if this can chip away at what's going on with OpenAI and maybe help deflate the AI bubble a little bit more, this is yet another example of where Tim Cook is going to be heralded as some kind of AI Nostradamus. That like, oh, well, Tim Cook knew all along that AI was just going to be a scam. And look, now even Apple's going after OpenAI and protecting their IP. And we want Apple, a good American company. We want them to be able to protect themselves and make better products for consumers. We're fine when Apple steals. No one's out there like criticizing Apple. Well, let me tell you, like people like me are out there criticizing Apple for their horrific anti-consumer business practices. But we don't make a lot of news, we don't make a lot of noise, and we don't make a lot of money. So we must not. We're just cranks and haters. But this is just the wild spectrum of who's more popular. And unfortunately, like a massive part of our media and our reporting on these is just going to side with, well, people like iPhones and people don't like AI. So, Apple wins this one. And I don't disagree. For once, like our interests align. But with the same fervor and the same support that Apple's getting, Apple also should have received just as much ire and criticism when they were stealing intellectual property from another computer. So it's pretty great. John Gow, wait a minute. Am I rooting for Apple? It's so bad. It's pretty rough. Oh, and Blue Man Rules, wishing everyone a good morning. Good morning, Blue Man Rule. Vonnegut Rosewater, yeah, Apple is actually suing John Prosser. And again, I don't know that I can gin up any strong feelings. I have not talking. I talk for a living. So when I'm talking to people, is the past tense of talk is talking. I have not spoken with John in a really long time. We were on a live stream together. I think I was the only anti-Apple crank, but who else was on there? There's another YouTuber that's just like known for being just an Apple guy. And just like any token pushback against something Apple had done, and John would be like apoplectic. Like his blood pressure would skyrocket, and he would just start throwing out non sequiturs. And well, if you hate this, then what about that? And you're like, well, those two things aren't related. If we're going to concede my point that Apple sucks here, we can move on to talk about Samsung because I'm equally displeased with Samsung. And like, he eventually like tapped out because there was nothing to just sort of pin me on. If anyone can find that video clip, I cannot remember whose live stream I was on. And I felt bad because I think we were supposed to be there to talk about something. And it turned into, it was Tech King Mike. Holy crap. Vazikos, well remembered. I might need to rewatch it. Just like, was I full of crap? I have no idea. It's just like, I couldn't care enough to, anyway. So I don't even know what John Prosser's stuff looks like, but to me, it's always just been this shrill beacon of nonsense. And I guess if he's trying to like claim any kind of journalistic integrity, then good for him. Fight the fight. But Apple's lawyers have pretty deep pockets, and I don't know how anyone survives that kind of legal scrutiny when, again, Apple's going to be way more popular than John Prosser. Yeah, go V8. It's kind of like Epic versus Apple. I appreciate what's happening, but still, screw them both. it's Godzilla. It's let them fight. If they're spending time fighting each other, maybe they'll spend just a fraction less energy making our lives miserable. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's gross and it makes me feel icky, and I'll have to take a shower after this podcast anyway. Another banger write-up from Ashley Bellinger. But again, in what is the end run? What is the goal that we'll eventually get to with AI? Because none of this stuff is in any way lining up with the aspirational marketing of AI. It's all garbage. It's all unsustainable. It's all stupid promises of business models that will probably never materialize. And when we show the actual harms, we're still reluctant to regulate. We can't step on those precious little AI toesy woesies. And then you get stuff like this. Ashley Bellinger, Ars Technica, lawsuit. Man used Grok to make 7,000 images of stepdaughter, then shot himself. And this is absolutely disgusting and horrific. And I'm an old guy, and I get a little spiky or snarky about things like content warnings or trigger warnings. And this is one that made me feel ill. But people in our society have problems. That's not new. That's not a groundbreaking discovery. We've always acknowledged that there are those in our society who are more vulnerable. There are those in our society who are more predatory. And even sometimes the predatory individuals, if they had found any kind of normalized solution to getting mental health treatment, might have not fallen into the pits of despair that they create for other people too. I'm not trying to minimize what this guy did. I'm also not trying to celebrate what his end result was, being very cagey in my language here, because the more explicit I describe this stuff, just the more sick I feel about it. This is one that, like, I honestly might have appreciated the content warning myself. It is grotesque. We're looking at all of these facets of our society where every single time a new product or service shows up in the modern era of consumer electronics and consumer data services, it starts out free. It's really, really cool. Companies like, hey, we're really cool and groovy, or it starts out really inexpensive. And then if it finds any kind of adoption, any kind of audience, the businesses turn the screws on the customers first, then turns the screw on advertisers, and eventually only reports to shareholders. We have a phrase for this. It's called enshittification. But the enshittification of life is so much darker than just a cutesy little phrase that Cory Doctorow came up with. Here's a man who had a lot of problems. I think that's pretty clear. And he was in a position of authority over someone who was not his own kid. And I'm very confident that this was an individual who enjoyed a certain flavor of content on streaming services that reinforce this type of narrative because it's algorithmically popular, which then just creates a feedback loop. Because it's algorithmically popular and taboo, we're going to encourage you to watch more of it. And so I'm being really precious and I'm being really careful here, because I still, in my heart, genuinely believe that content like violent movies, violent video games, content doesn't directly inform someone's perspective on the world. I don't believe in the Jack Thompson era of we've got to go after video games because they're murder simulators. But I think we've seen that the approach used by social media is an elevated, weaponized, systemic system that aggressively targets people that are probably more susceptible and vulnerable. And it creates that feedback loop where this person's issues fell into the feedback loop and escalated, where he started taking his actions out of the fantasy of a tube site and started acting on those fantasies, started creating terrible content based on those fantasies, and eventually got to a point where there was no other out for him. This is a complete and total failure of social media. It is the current design of social media to create more heavy users like this. And increasingly, I feel this is something we can point to say this is the end result of what happens when you give terrible people or problematic people access to these kinds of content generating tools. Where is the comeuppance for a company like Twitter? Or excuse me, now SpaceX. SpaceX is kind of the one owning this AI abuse content factory. And we're still, we can't regulate it. We can't step on any toes. It would be so bad if someone pushed back against AI, because then what about NVIDIA? NVIDIA needs to make more money so our economy go up. Apple still has Twitter in the App Store. Google still has Twitter in the App Store. If you made an app that could generate horrific material, don't you think Apple and Google would be like, well, this is not appropriate. We've got to do something and protect the children. Grok. This dude made awful content about a family member in his household using Grok. And Elon Musk is out there like, oh, well, it's a conspiracy to keep Twitter down. And you're like, well, no, maybe your system is just being used for really hateful and harmful purposes. Maybe it's just genuinely not that popular with consumers because of stories like this. And maybe we need to see a bit more than just a token pushback. I think at some point, if this is systemic and this is still continuing and we're going through all of these lawsuits, if Apple and Google can't find it in themselves to regulate this kind of content being generated on apps that are available in their app store, then maybe Apple and Google also need to be held liable. Maybe it's on Google. Can you still get Twitter with Grok enabled in the Google Play Store? Then Google must be fine with this kind of content generation. Miss me with all this like, oh, but we're keeping adult content out of the Google Play Store and out of the Apple App Store. No, you're not. Look right here. Oh, that's great. If you're going to posture and say, we've got these strict guidelines on what we'll allow, then you're allowing this, your guidelines must not be that strict. You see how we're constantly in this hypocrisy battle. Either allow it and say we're fine with it, and it's not on us to police what people install on their phones, or maybe do something. Here's a family that's just been destroyed. Here's a man that was a major problem getting access to tools that he probably shouldn't have had access to and probably needed a lot of mental health care. Another issue for another day if we're talking about healthcare and stuff like that. But I can at least say this is someone who was failed by a system that does not prioritize healthcare in general, let alone mental health care. But could we have stemmed the potential harm to this family if this dude had been, if it had been more normalized that this guy could have gone out and gotten some help? Yeah. I think it would have been a benefit to the family in total. This is ridiculous. So I haven't even dug through this case. Whether or not you choose to read this, it is an excellent piece of reporting from Ashley. Again, just well cited, well sourced, lots of links, what the complaints look like, what the lawsuit looks like, and we're going to keep playing this game. Individual, case by case, lawsuit by lawsuit. This stuff is getting horrifically worse for us. Every week I come out and I complain about some kind of issue with social media and algorithmically sorted content. And I'm preaching to the choir. I know a lot of folks here agree with me, but now go talk to your family and friends. Are they still on Facebook? Are they still using Twitter? Are they fine kind of trolling through the darker sides of Reddit? Like, are we trying to affect positive change and reduce harm? Or are we just sort of fine with companies experimenting on our brains and making life worse for everybody? Oh, but I couldn't leave Threads. I need to still get all my likes and internet points and doom scrolling on Threads. Okay. I mean, it sucks. I still share my videos on Threads because no one wants to leave these sites, but I did walk away from Twitter again. So that's kind of the first step in my personal repentance for ever having been a fan of Twitter. Let me take a little drink of coffee here real quick. Yeah, Gabaletta. This is what I'm talking about. So Gabaletta says, isn't Reddit in the same ballpark, which I just mentioned? Anyone can download the app and anyone can look up adult content there without any sort of barrier other than the usual, are you sure you're old enough pop-up? And my feelings on that are very personal because Reddit went hard on disabling the tools and the management and the APIs that I used to try and build a little tech community on Reddit. There was the subreddit Glowing Rectangles. And along the way, a lot of their reasoning for adopting this hardline stance was costs. You just can't expect us to give out APIs for free that let people use Reddit. So they were trying to rein in all of the advertising monies that they could get and all of the data trafficking and harvesting that they could get through their own app at the expense of all the communities that were using these much better tools. I still kind of poke back in from time to time to see, like, would it even be worth trying to resuscitate this community after Dig just absolutely pooped the bed? And no, the situation hasn't gotten any better. Reddit's still horrifically restrictive in what we can and can't do. And there's also this like secondary, well, if we do this, we can also control, because they went hard against a lot of these more visible adult communities because they were also trying to court more advertisers. So Reddit corporate put this hard spin in place, but they really haven't done anything to stem a lot of the darker communities on their own platform. So if Apple and Google's reasoning for not allowing an adult content app is because that violates their terms of service, then why don't they go after Reddit? See, this is like what I say, you're trying to have it both ways when you look at something like the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. You are not directly held responsible if you operate a platform. But Reddit is saying they have editorial control over what can happen on their platform, and they've ended a bunch of subreddits because they violated some sense of morality. Okay, but what about all the stuff that's still there that Apple and Google seem to be totally fine with? You can't run an adult content app, but you can just download Reddit and go digging through dark Reddits. There you go. So what are we doing here? Why are we pretending to put up this token barrier to objectionable content when stuff like this can happen and a family can be destroyed by people who desperately needed to seek help and instead turn to these automated tools. I've got a bunch of stories here. Let me take one more drink of coffee. My throat is really dry today. And I'm going to kind of just round robin the next four and not go so deep on this stuff. My feelings on that last story, just such a horrific story, but I really thought I could maybe skim it, and instead it brought out more. So I did not mean to spend that long on it. Give me 2 seconds here. And Michael C2, I see your comments, man. I absolutely agree with you. And it's getting harder and harder to be like, you're complaining about life and social media, but you're still on all of these terrible social media sites. I just couldn't possibly change my behavior. It also kind of came to a head, like on that article, the editorial that I posted, how I know YouTube is effing with their creators. I got a lot of like earnest replies and comments and messages. A couple people hit me up in DMs and stuff. But after a point, it's still like, well, you got to play the game. And you're like, why is it always on the creators to eat the terrible policy of a YouTube or a Facebook? And people still want to see content from that creator. At some point, it's still like, man, push back. Maybe help us out if you still want to see stuff from us on these platforms. Most people are watching this on YouTube right now. You know, the assist would be nice rather than just, kind of, oh, what are you going to do? Well, I guess leave. If you noticed, at some point, the only winning move is not to play. And you say you want to see content from these kinds of creators, but then there's just nothing else we could do. Can't support in any other way. Okay, well, then at some point we all burn out and we stop making content. And I know you'll move on to someone else, but I know people keep complaining that it seems every cycle and generation of new influencers in the tech space is just more manipulated, advertising is shallower than the last. There's a reason for that. But I digress. Moving right along, Tom's Hardware. AI servers will consume more power than all conventional data center hardware combined by 2027. Global data center electricity consumption set to grow by 26% this year alone. And I just want to point out, from 2025 to 2026, we saw an increase of roughly 84%, almost doubling the amount of power drawn by AI data centers. But more traditional, conventional servers are effectively flat by comparison. They grew less than 1% in 2025 and are projected to rise 1.2% in 2026. So while all other data centers still use up more power than AI in 1 year is within 20% of the global total of other data centers. And other data centers are much less aggressively being built out. So this whole thing, like, oh, we're gonna build more AI, build more AI. We are now getting to a point where there are AI data centers and every other facility, and they're almost equal. This year, in literally in 1 year, they went from being like almost a third to being almost equal. But there is just this nice little trend that I like seeing. This is also an article from Tom's Hardware. I'm sorry, who wrote the last one? Tom's Hardware, written by Luke James, and this article written by Joey Morales. Power company hikes data center bills by 30%, cuts residential electricity costs by 1.3%. Oregon approves change through Power Act, pushes developments using more than 20 megawatts of power to pay their fair share. So instead of spreading out the costs on AI data centers, Oregon is now saying, hey, you just need to pay for what you use. We're not going to spread out. We're not going to raise everybody's prices. if you are disproportionately using more power than 20 megawatts, you're going to pay the higher prices and the increased costs of the operations of the power generation in our state. And this is something I've got this linked. This is the Tom's Hardware link, Power Company Hikes Data Center Bills. Take this link, and I'm going to beg everyone in this chat, take this link and email it to your local state officials, your elected officials. Email it to an attorney general, email it to a state senator, email it to people in the federal system, email it to your congressional member in your district. Instead of sharing this on social media, instead of tweeting this to all of your followers on that cutesy little app called Twitter, take this link and put it into an email and put that in an internet tube and send that email through the internet tube to a congressman or a congresswoman and say, why can't we do that in our city? Why can't we do this in our state? And again, they're going to get you're going to see, if you live in a state where more likely it'll be Republican senators and congressmen, but that is going to be so much more effective in guiding policy and actually speaking your mind and speaking truth to power elected officials than any social media activation or campaign. Oregon is doing this part of it right. You want to build a data center? Pay for your power. Our residential areas, because look at all the other stories. I actually cut 2 other links that were like, oh, it's summer and it's hot, so this city is asking residents to not use their air conditioners because that's too much power, and the data center that just went in can't operate normally. F that. You can miss me with that. Email them this link. Say, I support an initiative where if you want to build a data center, you've got to pay for it. And we want to see this kind of strict regulation also enacted for things like pollution. So you don't pollute our water and you don't pollute our air. So you can bring power online if it's green power. You want to cover your facility with solar panels and wind, do it. But you're going to pay for your own power. And our water better be sparkling clear when it comes back out of your facility. I don't see why that's unreasonable. If you can't account for those things, you don't have a real business model. And Michael C2, I mean, you're right, but if we're going to keep building them, Michael C2 says, we desperately need a moratorium on data center construction. And there, we're seeing the bills go up at the national level, but this is one of those that I think we need to fight back down grassroots, city and state. Fight this stuff at city and state, and it'll eventually drive the federal policy. We can't go top down on this. I think we need to go bottom up. 2 quick stories here that are also kind of super depressing. Command control device. Sorry. Didn't Microsoft or someone build the data center incorrectly, causing severe noise pollution because they didn't treat the building with appropriate noise blocking measures? I don't think it's just the one. I think you're right. One of the facilities that has been scrutinized was a Microsoft facility. I'd have to look that up. I'm sorry. My memory is just absorbing so much crap over the last couple years. But I think this has been a very common complaint. We've seen numerous videos of people walking around with like noise testing devices or just holding up a portable recorder and showing how much activity there is. There is tons of noise pollution from multiple facilities. And I don't think that that's a singular experience. I think, unfortunately, you build a giant warehouse full of servers and you try and do it on the cheap, and you're going to end up with a terrible experience for people in that community. 2 quick stories here. The RAM situation is going to keep getting worse. This is written up by Hee-Kyung Yang and Kenneth Lee over at Reuters. SK Hynix CEO sees worst memory shortages. Blah, blah, blah. SK Hynix CEO sees worst memory shortage in 2027. demand to outstrip supply beyond 2030. So one of the people who makes RAM, one of the companies who makes RAM, their CEO is saying, yeah, there's just so much demand. You just can't fulfill it all. It's just going to be a bummer. I guess you're just going to have to keep paying ridiculous prices for RAM through like, I don't know what, at least 2030. I want to dig deeper into the article. I just want to say, where was it? The company's shares have also soared, while concerns about the sustainability of the AI share rally have resulted in an 18% slide for SK Hynix shares in the past 2 weeks. They're up more than sevenfold over the past 12 months. We're seeing they've got all the numbers on all the investment cycles. So it's pretty interesting because this is one of those companies that is currently being sued again. It's SK Hynix, Micron, and Samsung for potential collusion in the RAM manufacturing space, which has absolutely never happened before, except for all the times that these companies have colluded and price fixed in the past to eliminate competition and drive up prices on consumers and make sure that they can control the supply. Because last week, we talked about how Samsung had a record-breaking profits announcement where they made more profit in this last year than they'd made in like the previous 20 years combined. And that's absolutely reflective of a healthy marketplace with good competition. So much so that Samsung is offering record-breaking earnings guidance on their next fiscal quarter. They're saying they're going to make they made a ton of money Q2 of 2026. They're going to make even more money their next fiscal quarter, and they're just doing their due diligence to announce that to shareholders, because you got to tell shareholders to expect they're going to make more money or less money. So I just want to highlight this here. Profits second quarter 2025, 4.68 what is this? 4.68 trillion. What is the currency? Won? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm sorry. KRW, Korean won. 4.68 trillion. Profit second quarter 2026, 89.4 trillion, which works out to roughly $58.8 billion in profits. They increased 85 trillion in over 1 year. Samsung's business is just so healthy, and the CEOs are so incredible. They went from just under 5 trillion to 89 trillion. Again, in America dollars, that's roughly from about $4 billion to almost $60 billion. A 15-fold increase in profits. And that's solely through earnest hard work, no market manipulation, no collusion, no price fixing. This it's just what the market will bear. It's just all real. And next quarter, they're going to make more than $60 billion. And they still can't build a great phone to save their lives. Because people just keep buying their ish. And so this is it's staggering. I'm sorry, I got the math on that wrong. The latest figure represents a 19-fold jump in profits compared to the results from the second quarter of 2025. I said like 15 or 17 or something like that. No, I was underestimating. It is a 19-fold, almost 20 times more profit in fiscal quarter 2 than they had in fiscal quarter 2 1 year ago. And we're still going to play this game. The last lawsuit against Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix was thrown out because they just couldn't prove that there was any kind of market manipulation or any type of direct collusion between these companies. What you need is an email from Mr. Hynix to Mr. Micron and Mr. Samsung that says, let us work together to do a crime. And you didn't have that email, so there's just no way we could investigate. We had to throw the court case out. There's just nothing we could do. So there's a new lawsuit going up. We'll definitely be checking in on that next lawsuit to see if this one has any legs, because how do you jump profits 19-fold in a year without doing anything strategically different or better? All three of these companies are experiencing these record-breaking profits. Huh. Huh. Yep. From Simon Says Hypno, the Ramageddon just exacerbates my loathing of them. Like every time I see a headline, I'm like, Lenovo uses Chinese company to make more RAMs. Like, yeah. Simon, exactly. Engineered profiteering. They're very good at doing the business. This was some good news, and I am actually really happy to see this. I'm hoping that this is legal precedent in the whole era of stop killing games issues that we've seen with Sony ending support for physical media while also just eradicating content on people's PlayStation accounts. Your PlayStation account, if it goes like too long or it goes inactive for too long, they can just scrub all of your content and all of your games. Like, you just lose your license. I probably already lost mine. I have not logged into my PlayStation account for a long time now. And we didn't buy very many games on the PS4, but we had a huge library of games for the PS3. And I just haven't been bothered to go back and like dig through that old account. I've basically just become total a PC gamer. And while Steam has its issues, let's not, just blindly support one massive billionaire CEO corporation over another. I've still had a much better experience on Steam than I've had on any game console ever. And now I'm also just doing more to buy games like on GOG. I digress. When we look at Steam, one of the things that pisses me off about Steam is the idea of me dying. I think a lot of stories can always come back to my own feelings about my own mortality. Am I sad that someday I will shuffle off this mortal coil and not be a part of this plane of existence? Yes. And I hate it when I have to think about that. And companies that make me think about what happens after I'm gone make me sad. But one of the things that I think is going to be a necessary argument to start having in courts are things like game libraries. If I die and I have an old box of Nintendo cartridges that you have to blow on, I can give that to my kids and say, here are all my Nintendo games. If I die, Steam says, no, your account dies with you. And that seems incorrect to me. And it also sounds incorrect to courts in China. So this is also written up by Joey Morales over at Tom's Hardware. Chinese courts allow heirs to inherit accounts of deceased gamers. Multiple cases spanning years establish precedent for digital ownership of games, in-game items, and microtransactions. I am so stoked to see that. I am so happy. And this is yet another, like we start talking about the Stop Killing Games initiative. This is something that we also need to attack on equal footing. You bought all of these games. They engaged in a contract with you and they made you sign a terms of service that said, no, 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 you didn't buy anything. Well, no, they got to keep all the money. It's not like they're refunding the money when you die, right? So there is an idea of ownership. It's not that I own the license to this game, but I own the access to the license of that game. If you want, let me sell that license, right? If I can get rid of all of these games before I die, I can sell off my collection. People can buy my license to play the game, and that'd be great. And then I can pass that money on to my heirs. But no, we've made this completely gate-kept one-way transaction. And now courts in China, multiple courts in China have said, no, you can't call this ownership. If you want to only ever lease, kind of like Netflix style, great. People can subscribe and pay forever and own nothing. But you have created a storefront that resembles the real life storefront of a place where you could buy games. You have to follow through on this. You have to give that content to someone if the person wills it, that their descendants or their relatives can inherit their game collection. And that to me is correct. That is the correct solution. Mr. Maug, death is sad. Let's aim to live till 200. Yeah, I think by the time I turn 200, I will definitely be fine moving on to another plane of existence. But anyway, just yet another one. As we approach these kinds of conversations, if there's a court case that comes up, email local politicians, email attorneys general. There's probably some law clerk who will cut their teeth on a case like this and make a splash. This is going to be the thing that makes their career, right? So start aiming for those kinds of conversations instead of like, I saw this on social media and I said reshare it, and now I have contributed to the conversation. No one with decision making power cares what we tweet. That is all just the distraction that makes us feel like we're doing stuff. I mean, yeah, still share the word with other people in your circles of family and friends. Spread good knowledge. But if we want this on the radar of someone who might eventually be able to craft meaningful policy, email it to an attorney general. It takes just as much time to tweet this as it would be to, hey, I caught this article. I think this work in China is really cool. I think I would love to see some kind of conversation about this here in the United States. Send. Done and done. Speaking of leasing perpetually and owning nothing, is anyone feeling really bullish on Netflix right now? I feel Netflix is starting to approach the same missteps and market saturation that Microsoft hit with Xbox Game Pass, where they had these ideas of how much more money they were going to get by squeezing the blood out of every stone that they encountered, by really making their product less and less hospitable for their paying customers, making it worse for people who were subscribers. And now they're starting that edge. They're seeing the future of what their service looks like and how their infinite growth is kind of stalling. You can keep raising prices, but now you're starting to find that saturation point where consumers are no longer thrilled with your service and are probably cutting back more. I was too early. As soon as they started really ratcheting prices on 4K streaming, when they said you had to have this number of screens. So the number of screens had a monetary value and the quality of the stream had a monetary value, but I couldn't choose 2 screens at 4K or 1 screen at 4K. You had to make me pick 4 screens at 4K, but then I couldn't share those screens with anyone. They could only be screens in my own home. And if I had a gadget that could leave my home, I would have to check in and make sure Netflix knew where I was. Just like I was a kid in the 80s and I went to a friend's house and I'd have to call home and say, I'm at a friend's house. Netflix couldn't possibly let me have 4 different people on my account, but they're charging me for 4 screens. Cool. Do you think it's a good sign for Netflix's business that their customer acquisition strategy is going back to free trials? Like, this one's kind of interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized my chat is blocking a lot of these headlines. I don't know where to put the chat. I don't want to disable the chat, but like if I put the chat here, I just kind of click it off for a second. Netflix free trials return after 6 years, but some of you will miss out. This is written up by Tushar Mehta at Android Authority. You can get 30 days of 4K HDR playback for free unless you're in the US or the UK. So it sounds to me like Netflix is pretty positive on their market saturation and their consumer density here in the United States, but it doesn't sound like they're growing much in other markets. So those other markets are going to get 30 days. Try and see if you can give them a little for free. Free, huh? And then you can even try 4K HDR streaming for 30 days for free. And then you just continue paying us after those 30 days. It's like I don't know, it's like a heavy user kind of business model. I don't know that this speaks well of Netflix's reputation globally, and it definitely speaks very poorly of the American consumer who's just, oh, I just keep subscribing to Netflix. I'm really annoyed about it. Maybe if I keep paying Netflix more money every single month, they'll make the service better, but I don't like it when they cancel all my favorite shows. I'm trying to think, like, I think in the last year, we've paid for 1 month of Netflix. And I did pay up just to have the no ads version, but we were the people who were locked in at the highest level, 4K quality every year. So Netflix went from getting hundreds of dollars from us every year to getting like 20. And I'm so tired of the people in our circles of family and friends like, well, I mean, there are so many, we can't cancel Netflix. Okay. So what was the last thing you watched and you really liked on Netflix? A show that was not produced by Netflix. Okay. All right. I don't get it. I don't get why this idea, this notion of like vote with your wallet means I have to do a thing. I have to do a thing. Can't do that. I better just keep giving Netflix my money every month. Because if I go to Netflix and I say, hey, turn off my subscription for a month, that means I have to like log into my account. So it's pretty great. From Johnny, my attitude towards Netflix is the same as Mike Ehrmantraut's toward Walter White just before, we had a good thing, but you had to ruin it with your greed and ego. And Vazikos, I wished Netflix returned family sharing from different homes. I still feel like there should have been a class action lawsuit against Netflix for this business practice. This is a mobile device. And now they're also mandating like everyone have their own individual account, even under these shared multi-screen, but they still have to report to the same home. This is a service that was built and sold and advertised as being mobile and you can experience it anywhere. And then locking it to one geographic location was always a cynical, greedy move, forcing people to spend extra on these accounts that were under this umbrella. And I think Netflix missed this opportunity just to split the business and say, hey, quality is one price, number of accounts under your family umbrella is another price. Done. You could have 12 accounts. We don't care. It's this much money per account. And I think that would have been an honest, straightforward, consumer-friendly way to do the exact same thing that they're doing. But under this, they know that they'll make a little bit more money because you're paying for these extras, even though you're probably not going to use them. Oh, you've got to guarantee that the 4 screens you're streaming with are all in your home address, your home location. And sometimes your phone goes on a vacation and you've got to constantly re-verify that device, or you can't watch the stuff you downloaded. And it sucks if your airplane's Wi-Fi isn't working. And now your kid can't watch this streaming show that they really wanted to watch. And you're just out of luck. It's too bad. Because the solution is not giving Netflix more money. The solution is increasingly compartmentalizing Netflix as a constant cost, doing less business with Netflix over a longer period of time, and then finding your content and media through other distribution channels that are far less punitive. I am having conversations with people who shouldn't be getting into this kind of stuff, but they're getting into stuff that Netflix would probably not like. I am talking to people who are really not tech savvy enough to, engage in the acquisition of content through other slightly more nefarious means, and they're very interested in how else they can watch their stuff. So we got to shift gears here. This is technically getting into the gadget block, which is kind of funny. So I want to take a brief pause because I put out something on the Patreon and I just want to follow through on this. Humble Bundle has a bundle going right now for these little like squad, co-op, team up kinds of games. And a lot of them are silly, gimmicky little party games and stuff like that. One of them's kind of a fun jump scare game that I think I'm also going to do a giveaway on. But one of the games was TMNT Splintered Fate. Uh, this game, I don't really feel has gotten the attention or the kudos that it really deserves. I am a huge fan of the game Hades, taking Greek mythology, Hades and Hades 2, both amazing games. Love them. Never going to be able to truly finish either of them. I'm just not that kind of gamer, but I can go a couple levels deep. Love it. Love the gameplay, the quick twitch, the hey, you die, you go back to the beginning, that kind of roguelite kind of experience. And what if you took the gameplay style, how much fun a game like Hades is, and then you put a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wrapper on top of Hades, and then you filled in one of the missing gaps that makes Hades so much fun in providing co-op. Hades co-op would be a license to print money, in my not so humble opinion. And that's what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate is. Very similar gameplay style, that kind of like dodge attack, light attack, technical attack, powered up attack, but with all of the Ninja Turtles each having their own kind of set of skills. Casey's pretty cool, and now their DLC. I'm replaying a part of Splintered Fate using Metalhead, one of my all-time favorite characters from every incarnation of Ninja Turtles. Is what if there was just a Bill and Ted 2 style robot Ninja Turtle made out of big blocky robot parts, and he's a distance tactical kind of support character that shoots guns instead of punching with his fists. Love it so much. So this Humble Bundle had the DLC for Metalhead, so I got the Humble Bundle, but now I've got this extra Steam code for TMNT Splintered Fate. So I opened this up on the Patreon. You didn't have to be a paying subscriber. You did have to be a subscriber to read this post, but you can subscribe for free. And so I got some replies, and now I'm going to go through and select. I got to go number. Oh, wait, I had it on my phone. So random. Nope, got it right here. Random number, go. That's 4. Okay, the number 4. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's Jabari Grace. Jabari, I'm going to reach out on the messages on Discord, on Patreon, and Jabari has got a copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate coming his way. I want to thank people that jumped in. I was like, hey, just drop a comment if you want. If no one leaves a comment, I'll just give it to the one person. I mean, if only one person leaves a comment, I'll just give it to them. But moving forward, because I like to do a lot of shopping on Humble Bundles, and I'm a very patient gamer, I'm fine for playing slightly older games. And I don't know, maybe people like you are cut from a similar disposition. If you haven't played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, jump on the Humble Bundle right now, because you can get the game and the Metalhead DLC for less than the price of the sale that's going on Steam for this game right now. And it is so much fun to play co-op. It is so much fun to play Hades co-op and have, you beat a boss and they're like, radical, cowabunga. And you're like, oh, I just love this. It's so nostalgic and current at the same time. So I'll reach out to Jabari and shoot him a Steam code. And thank you for everybody who dropped comments. And I've got a couple other Steam codes. They probably won't be as popular as TMNT, but I think this is from now on how I'm going to be giving away games. So you can hit patreon.com/somegadgetguy. You can follow and subscribe for free. And again, because this is a giveaway of some sort with a thing that is worth some kind of monetary value, this cannot be locked to my paying subscribers. But when you subscribe to the Patreon for free, you will actually get updates when I post new stuff. It's not like YouTube where you smash that bell icon and you might not be notified that I put out a new video. This is one of the ways that you can actually see when things are going to come to the channel or public, or you might get a free video game just for following along. So patreon.com/somegadgetguy. And thank you everybody who's been supporting the channel and contributing and leaving comments. And hopefully I have more stuff to give away, because I think this is kind of a fun way to give some stuff away. It's cool. Let me get this out of the way. Oh, and Ted, congrats, Jabari. Ooh, JGJ, there's also a Linux O'Reilly bundle on Humble Bundle. There's all kinds of really cool stuff. I don't love the distribution platform, the Neon Ichiban, or however you pronounce it. I don't like the app that much. But there was the Supergirl comics bundle. That one was really good. The John Scalzi. I don't know if the John Scalzi bundle is still on Humble Bundle, but it's the entire collected works of John Scalzi. John Scalzi wrote Red Shirts and Kaiju Preservation Society. Awesome. Really fun books, really biting satires, nerdcore out the wazoo. Like, I look at John Scalzi. If you picked up a book like Ready Player One and you enjoyed it, I'm not trying to take away your enjoyment of Ready Player One, but Ready Player One to me reads like boomers won't let their media go. That everyone needs to love what boomers and kind of Gen X, but more that kind of boomer Gen X cusp generation of people. Everyone needs to love all of the same things that we loved. And it just feels very cloying. John Scalzi has written books that absolutely celebrate like old Godzilla movies and have a fresh spin on them and are so much more accessible to younger readers. And also, if you're older like me, you love the references that he's crafting, and just how self-aware and biting the satire is just delicious. Kaiju Preservation Society is the best Godzilla movie that will never get made. And you can get his entire library for like $18. Like every single book he's ever published. So you should definitely check out a Humble Bundle from time to time. They've got some cool audio stuff. They've got lots of software. Like, you can get really great editing software for cheap. Lots of games, obviously. That's where they got their start. But there's just a ton of stuff. That's really, really cool. So moving into our gadget block, I do want to put this one up because I feel like we've been talking about RAM. We haven't talked about GPUs for a while. And, it's just like prices are getting crazy, and I think a lot of people are probably in similar boats where they're being a bit more conservative. They're not looking at massive PC rebuilds right now. If it's just like a component part that they need to replace, it's kind of painful to replace that stuff right now. And I think NVIDIA feels your pain. NVIDIA really seems like they're on the pulse and they understand the changing market conditions and just how tough it is for consumers out there. And so this is a big step for them to take some of that pain off your plate. You can't afford a new GeForce RTX graphics card. And they understand that. So instead, if you can't get that really awesome graphics card, what if? All right, now go with me on this. I think you're going to be really excited about this. What if instead you could get some trading cards of your favorite GeForce graphics cards? Yeah? What if instead of getting a replacement for your RTX 2080 Ti Cyberpunk 2077 edition, you could get a trading card of just one of the most popular GPUs, the RTX 2080? Or maybe you're just a passionate collector and you're going to get that GTX 1080. Yeah? Or you just have such fond memories of your 7800 GTX. See, you don't have to play amazing video games at higher fidelity and higher frame rates on your PC. Now you and your buddies sitting at the lunchroom table, you go to lunch and you break out your NVIDIA trading card decks. You open those decks and maybe you'll get a foil or a shiny or an exclusive or a super. Maybe they'll call them supers. Oh man, I got a 2080 super. Whoa, that's so exciting, dog. I can't play games on my home PC anymore because all the components burned out and we can't afford to replace thousands of dollars worth of RAM. But now I have a trading card of a GPU that I used to like. I just feel like this is going to be epic. If we could turn this into like an actual like card playing game, and you could have like collectible card packs, and people, grown ass men in their 40s, will go to Target at just when Target opens and fill up shopping carts full of NVIDIA trading cards so that they can resell them to people at ridiculous markups. Just like grown ass men buy NVIDIA GPUs to scalp them on eBay. Isn't this so exciting, y'all? Isn't this awesome? Trading cards series 1. There are going to be more series of trading cards. Aren't you so stoked? Aren't you so excited to give NVIDIA even more of your money for nostalgia over when you could actually buy the computing components that NVIDIA sold? Isn't this so great? I just feel like NVIDIA does not get enough credit for reading the room, for anticipating the needs of their customers, their most loyal customers, their fans, the people who are into this hobby and are passionate about building high-end desktops. Like, man, just nailed it. 100%, 200%. NVIDIA just knows. It brings a tear to my eye how in tune they are with their audience and how much they care. They just must care so much to offer this kind of collectible experience. Suo Lin, quote, "You had me in the first half vibes." Did I sell it? Did I do well? Did I make it feel like there was an actual story or something here? Say what you will about Apple selling a microfiber cloth, but I guess a really horrifically expensive cloth to wipe down your monitor is at least some functional piece of fabric, as opposed to the e-waste of mylar and cardboard that a GeForce trading card set is gonna bring. Oh, command control device from your lips to God's ears. We need AMD and Intel and Qualcomm and MediaTek and Samsung and Apple to copy NVIDIA and do their own card collections. Could you imagine a collectible card trading game where, like, I'm going to use my Apple M4 against your GeForce 5080 and it does 10 damage and you did 2 CUDA, and so my CPU giggle pickles are gonna fight your megal flips. Oh, dog, he just tapped his MediaTek radio, and now he has longer reach on his Samsung points. Oh, this is hilarious, Ron GKP. I want NFTs of those trading cards. How could they have missed the most obvious? What will use more GPU compute power? Pieces of cardboard aren't going to do anything. Ron, you just changed the whole game. Why aren't these NFTs? Not only could you own a 5090 trading card, you could own the original 5090 trading card NFT. Doesn't give you anything. It just references a link to an image, but it's yours, sort of, in not any kind of fungible way. From John Gao, how do I get a Jensen Huang signed limited edition 5090 trading card? Can you imagine, like, how much would that go for if he signed it himself? Oh, man. And, you could make it even fancier if you did, like, a faux leather jacket texture. So it's not foil. So NVIDIA trading cards, the really valuable ones, aren't foils. They're fake leather. Yeah. Yeah, now we're cooking. That's absolutely, that'd be the hotness. These were stories that I actually kind of, moving on. These were stories that actually kind of tripped my interest, and I just wanted to bring them up collectively. Again, it's two stories back to back. We bought Lex a Kobo. This isn't an advertisement for Kobo. Kobo is not sponsoring this podcast. But I have just been very pleased with the experience of using that Kobo because, like I've said before, I own an incredible library of ebooks from having bought Humble Bundles. The John Scalzi collection, when you buy it, they're all DRM-free ebooks. And I'm not upset to say I bought all those ebooks. I've read them on my phones and on my tablets. And then maybe I also copied them to her Kobo where I felt they were age appropriate. She's just like 4% into Kaiju Preservation Society because I let her watch Pacific Rim and she knows dad loves big, dumb, giant monster movies. And Kaiju Preservation is the best big, dumb, giant monster movie that will probably never be made. That movie that book should already be a screenplay in production right now. I cannot say enough nice things about Kaiju Preservation Society. So these two popped up, and one of these was actually both of these I think were shared on the Discord. One I caught just because I was reading Notebook Check. It is exciting to me to see continue to see these efforts in making new e-readers. Just like I love headphones, there's something so nice about having a purpose-built gadget for a very specific form of entertainment, and it lives just in that space. I want to pick up a book. If I read it on my phone, I can have a nice experience, but I'm still constantly getting interrupted by my phone. Same thing, I know people like to complain about gaming on their phone. To me, this is somewhat similar, but for me, reading is even more distraction prone. If I'm gaming and it's, I'm getting pop-ups or notifications, like for some reason I can kind of filter that in a way where disruption to reading is much more catastrophic to me reading a book. So these are two back-to-back, one written up by Abid Shanto over at Notebook Check. There's a Hisense e-ink phone with a detachable secondary display. And I think this is a really interesting idea. There's a screen that detaches. So there was a Hisense phone that was dual screen, but both screens were built in. This is a phone where a screen pops off and it has a monochrome display. It's called the High Break Dual 2. I don't think that's a great name, High Break. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be the most powerhouse, but they did list it here. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is still plenty capable for a high quality smartphone mobile experience, but they're targeting in China, they're targeting around a $600 price, which could be really interesting. I love this. This time, it's not just e-ink screens that are making a comeback. Hisense. So this could be really cool. I would love to see Hisense succeed with a dual solution. You have a little screen that can kind of snap on, and then you can read books on a passive e-ink display. And then also shared on the private Discord, Open Book Touch. There's a DRM-free, Wi-Fi connected 4.26-inch open source hardware e-reader that's going into crowdfunding. This is going to be a little pricey. This is going to be more expensive than the Kobo that we got my daughter. Well, actually, depending on what you get, it could be about the same price as the Kobo. But one of the nice things is this locked down to any one company's specific ecosystem? I was a little anxious about buying my daughter a Kobo, but it was one of the better color e-ink displays that in reviews, it got good reviews. And then the second I got it, I just started putting books on it. We haven't bought a lot through Kobo. We've purchased 2 books for her directly through the Kobo service, but almost everything else has been accessible through multiple other avenues of buying directly or of even using the library. So having an open source e-reader, this is not locked down to anybody. It's going to be kind of a bummer if all of your books are like Kindle, because I don't think it'll support the Kindle library. But if you start building your ebook collection like we've been building ours, it is nice to have an alternative in this space that isn't proprietary. It isn't locked to any one company's platform. So I think it's got limited support though. I think it only supports EPUB and like basic text files. I'm trying to it was in the article, and I'm trying to find where they listed what it could do. Yeah, so book formats, EPUB and text. So let's say your book is DRM free but PDF, you'd have to transfer that PDF to an EPUB to get it to read. The newer Kindles obviously are really trying to lock you into just the Kindle format, but Kobo still, I think, one of the winners. The Kobo supports EPUB, PDF, MOBI, text, HTML, RTF, CBZ, CPR, and KEPUB. And I'm not sure what KEPUB is, but we haven't found a book yet or a comic yet that hasn't worked on my daughter's Kobo. Sorry, this being about Open Book Touch, it's just kind of cool. It makes me sad because I had a Sony e-reader when they were wildly expensive. I got the Sony and it was built beautiful. It was still like one of the nicest built gadgets I think I've ever held. It had this nice kind of like angled feel that almost felt like, as you read a book, one of the nice things about reading a paper book is that the book gets thinner, right? As you read through the book and you have fewer pages to get through. And it had this like sculpt, and it wasn't a wedge, but it had this like kind of sleek feel in one direction, had this beautiful like leather flip case, nice buttons and controls. It wasn't touchscreen at the time, but really nice buttons and controls. And the battery just totally failed on it. And I couldn't recover it. I couldn't reset it, and I couldn't find a way to repair it. And it just broke. It was so expensive, and I just haven't bothered to get myself another e-reader. But now playing with my daughter's Kobo, I want to get something. And most of my books are EPUB. I have some software that can convert some of the other books that are in formats like PDF. I'm seriously considering getting an Open Book Touch just to see how it plays. But it's just such a fun and unique kind of vibe. I love seeing, like, I'll come down, she gets up, she's usually downstairs before I get downstairs, and I look and there's my daughter eating breakfast, and she's got her Kobo propped up and she's reading about dragons and magic and fairy tales and kaijus, and like that's a part of her morning routine. And we're not watching TV, we're not even playing music. She's just like eyes locked on this little e-ink reader going through magical worlds and realms and shoveling scrambled eggs in her face before she's got to go to camp or before she has to go to school. It's just really pretty sweet. So if you're interested, there's going to be a link to Open Book Touch and you can catch the crowdfunding drive. I'm going to I might grab one of these. I would like to support more initiatives that bring this kind of stuff to consumers. Yes, Future It's Here. They reached out to me and they never sent me anything. I really wanted to review one of these. I think it's XTE Inc. I think is how you pronounce the company name, but XTEINK, has an X3 ebook reader that attaches to the phone via MagSafe. I don't have it up here. So it looks like that little Insta360 um, magnetic external display. So I don't know. I did a review on the Insta360 Selfie Snap, and it's this little screen that plugs into your phone and it mirrors the screen, but it's on the back of your phone, so you can use your camera, the rear camera, and compose a better shot. I don't know where I put it. I've lost this thing. It makes me sad because it's a cool little screen. I'm just not going to use it that often, but when I want to use it, I can't find it. So the XTE ink looks a little like that idea, but it's an e-reader. It's a full little e-reader that just snaps to the back of your phone. It is such a cute little idea. They reached out to me about wanting to review one, and I said, absolutely, yes, this looks so cool. And then I never heard from them again. From Ciense, e-ink tablets and readers that are unlocked are so important. Vonnegut Rosewater, yes, like obviously it's not going to be as good as an e-reader in terms of eye strain, but the TCL is so cheap right now. You won't be unlocked for 6 months after you pay the $55, but that's it. And I would even say like it is worth considering one of those Next Paper tablets. I wish, again, I reached out to the folks at TCL when Next Paper was invented. I was like, please let me go hands on. And I would go to these TCL events and they'd be like, do you want to see a 90-inch television? I'd be like, cool. I can't do anything with that. I can shoot video of someone standing next to it. Isn't this so cool? It's a 90-inch television. And then I'd be like, yes, but I'm a mobile guy. Let me check out some Next Paper. Yeah, we'll definitely send you something. And then nothing. And they just completely vanish. Years of this have gone by. They keep reaching out to me to talk about new products that are coming out, new TVs that they're working on. They keep sending me press releases on all of the Next Paper stuff. And then I'll be like, hey, can I review one? And they're like, yes. And then I never hear from that person ever again. Yeah, Sue Lin, man, I remember that amazing Sony ebook reader I used to have, built-in folio, column of buttons on the side of the screen. The Sony e-readers were so nice. I understand why, like, they were too expensive, but the Kindle thing just really broke them open when Kindle just went for cheap. And I don't know, it just makes me sad. Just like Sony DAPs, like Sony audio players, a Sony ebook reader I think would do so well. From Vonnegut Rosewater, I think you can still upload EPUB files to Kindle, but you can't back up your own Kindle books, and who knows how long to even let you upload non-Kindle books to your library. The only Kindle I ever owned, I paid $25 for on Woot, and it was like 8 years ago. And it was like 8 years old, still got days worth of battery life. I eventually traded it back to Amazon for the same that I paid for it. I know recent changes to Kindle have made the backup and that issue way more anti-consumer. But honestly, can't, I don't know if newer Kindles can handle other books. According to like the charts that you see, what file formats do these things support? Sometimes it's a little gimmicky, like the main store is Kindle, so it only supports Kindle edition books, but it might be able to support EPUB if you upload it or side load it, right? We got to make it sound hackery. But I'm not sure if the new ones, I don't know. Future, it's here. The ability to read in the sun. So nice. So good. Again, it's just like I look at my Pebble watch. Like I'm wearing my OnePlus watch right now because I'm indoors. When I'm outside, the Pebble watch looks so good when it's under direct sunlight. It's so nice. It's really fun. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll buy a Kobo. We got to wrap this podcast up with the big story of the week for us techies. Let me get one more drink of coffee here. This is going to cap my coffee. And then we can talk about some Pixel, y'all, because I know you're super excited about Pixel 11. You're the most excited you've ever been about Google's next Pixel. I can feel it. Okay. I also snuck in a drink of water there. So this is written up by my buddy, Stephen Shank over at Android Authority. He's been doing great work at Android Authority, and genuinely, I just have not been pulling a lot of articles from Android Authority recently. But this Pixel 11 Pro Fold FCC listing adds support for a big Tensor G6 shakeup. So I'm going to spoil a part of this, but if you go through and they've got things like the SAR target, how much radiation is absorbed, and they go through the algorithms for the radio transmission, the MediaTek TASAR V2 algorithm has been designed to meet the compliance limits over the required duration while still allowing dynamic control of transmit power for meeting system performance. Now that's interesting. This is a Pixel using the newer Tensor G6. It's the Pixel 11, and it's a MediaTek algorithm for controlling the radio. Well, that's a little bit different. You know, if you have a Pixel, do I have one on my desk? Oh, yeah, I do. I don't use this phone at all. This phone was such a waste to buy, even just for reviewing. This is my Pixel 10 Pro XL, and I regret that I've given Google money for this phone, and it kind of sucks. I don't like it. If you can get an incredible deal on this phone, like your carrier's giving them away, then cool. It's a functional communications device, but it's still terrifically underpowered. The camera sensors are years behind Vivo and Xiaomi and Oppo. The radio management is pants on head terrible. And it runs really hot. And now we're in hot weather for the summer. It just batteries nuking itself all the time, and then you've got to wait a really long time because it takes forever to charge compared to similarly priced phones internationally. It is not a good phone. But one of the reasons why it's not a good phone is, I don't know why I put it down. I'm going to be holding it up to use it as a prop. One of the reasons why this is not a good phone is the radio management. How this phone connects to networks is worse than importing a MediaTek powered phone and connecting to those same networks. Now, when I am directly under the fastest UC millimeter wave, yada, 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 this phone does pretty well because I don't have full support for all of those permutations and flavors of 5G on my import. But the second I'm not immediately holding perfectly still under the fastest 5G data, this phone falls apart, runs crazy hot, and one of the reasons why is because its radio is not as good. The MediaTek radio is better. And there were rumors that we were seeing Google play with MediaTek radios, but that didn't happen for the Pixel 10 series. It looks like it's finally going to happen for at least the foldable Pixel 11. This is good news for MediaTek, and that will be better news for consumers. This is something we should celebrate. I am happy to see on a phone that I think is going to be kind of a mediocre phone. Everything that I'm seeing about Google and the Pixel 11, ooh, it's going to get the 2 nanometer TSMC fabrication. Ooh. I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. The CPU performance on the Pixel 10 Pro is an improvement over the Pixel 9 Pro, but it's still a ways behind what we got with the Qualcomm and MediaTek chips this last generation. CPU performance to CPU performance, they didn't really close the gap much. It was a bigger improvement from Pixel 9 to Pixel 10, but the improvement from like Snapdragon Gen 4 to Gen 5 and MediaTek 9400 to 9500 were bigger. So I feel MediaTek and Qualcomm were able to extend their lead over CPU performance over the Tensor. I don't think that's going to change. I bet you Qualcomm and MediaTek chips are still going to be significantly more powerful than the Pixel chip for CPU performance. Where the Pixel is really going to fall apart is this notion of an exceedingly expensive premium tier phone. And I mean this for the pros. A Pixel 11, a Pixel 11A, I don't have high expectations. You know you're going to get mediocre batteries and that Google is going to throttle your experience to hell after about 200 charge cycles. You want to waste your money on a Pixel, go waste your money on a Pixel. But when we talk about a Pro phone, I expect higher levels of performance, better future longevity for updates that are becoming increasingly more graphics intense, and there is no way to guarantee that when Google is probably going to use another Power VR GPU. The company that Apple gave up on for delivering underpowered GPUs is now the company that Google is using for their most expensive chips and phones. Gameplay, demonstrably worse. Emulation, no support for it because no one likes Power VR GPUs. You want to run a ton of UI through a GPU to smooth it out and get higher frame rates? Guess what? That's going to drain more battery on a Pixel than doing similar graphics processing on a MediaTek or a Qualcomm. This is not going to be a good chip, but I'm hoping that in the nuts and bolts, average consumer experience, that at least your battery life won't be miserable because we're finally moving over to a better radio, to a better modem. I know Samsung bootlickers will be out there saying, oh, but the new Exynos chip is actually pretty good, and Exynos radios have improved so much over the last couple of years. And I'm sure that's true. But they have not improved enough to give direct generational to generational competition to MediaTek and to Qualcomm. And this is something where all these people, MediaTek chip. MediaTek makes garbage chips like the Helio. The MediaTek radio in my Vivo X300 Pro has been very good and is going toe-to-toe really well, as in any way that I can track reception and measure as the phones report their own signal strength. I mean, it's neck and neck. My X300 Pro versus my X300 Ultra, it is very difficult to find practical differences in how those phones connect to cell towers. And the X300 Pro seems to get more consistent and more reliable higher speeds on my Wi-Fi than my X300 Ultra. Now, that's different because my OnePlus 15 seems to get more consistent and higher speeds on my Wi-Fi than my X300 Pro. But I'm just saying, you can't just say Qualcomm chip better than MediaTek chip. I feel like the OnePlus is just better optimized for different Wi-Fi networks. And that's maybe as much a Vivo issue. But when I compare Vivo to Vivo, the X300 Pro is the higher performer Wi-Fi solution. So that's going to be the problem, is we're going to be looking at another generation of $1,000 plus phones. I am expecting that the Pixel 11 Pro is probably going to be an $1,100 phone with very few practical or substantial upgrades, and that the Pro XL is probably going to be a $1,200 phone, if not more expensive than those prices. And you're going to pick that phone up and you're going to have a graphics and CPU experience that maybe can hang with a 2-year-old Qualcomm or a 3-year-old MediaTek. And you're going to have a whole bunch of people who are hand selected and approved by Google PR's department to get early review devices and get hands-on and go on trips and have all those experiences. And they're going to say, well, guys, I mean, like, who's even really playing games on their phones? I mean, let's not like in an era where game consoles are getting horrifically expensive and building a PC is getting expensive. And I bet you more and more consumers are actually turning to phones to have these kind of entertainment experiences. And you're going to tell them, oh, it's fine if you upgrade the storage on your Pixel 11 Pro XL. And it's gonna cost like $1,400 and it can't play games very well. I mean, who even does that? Because you can't be approved by Google if you have those kinds of criticisms of a Pixel. I can attest to that because Google PR tried to throw creators like me under the bus with that whole Team Pixel debacle. Oh, Team Pixel was always influencer marketing. And so other creators who were not a part of Team Pixel could question our credibility. But those creators are still handpicked by Google PR to get early access. And they're not going to rock that boat. Even though in a showdown between an iPhone and a Pixel, the iPhone will still win, but we're not going to criticize the Pixel. It's just, like iPhone and average consumers for $1,400 phones, average. $1,400 in average, and Apple in average, and iPhone and Pixel in average, and Gemini, and average consumers. Morons. From Rob Aarons. Hey, keep making me feel good for choosing the Pro over the Ultra, LOL. And it's so funny. The Ultra is definitely the better camera. But man, that MediaTek chip, that MediaTek radio are doing real well in the Vivo X300 Pro. Vonnegut Rosewater, yeah, every year, quote, finally the Pixel has a good radio, end quote. It's like you said that last year. You can't say that every year. It literally contradicts itself. I'm going to put it out there again. If they go with a MediaTek radio, this will be the year that I bet the Pixel has more consistent and more efficient radio management. But man, we've been on this ride for 6 generations of Tensor hardware. Going back to 2020, I was willing, when the Pixel was a cost savings for a pro level phone, had some advantages over other more expensive phones, I was willing to say, hey, the fingerprint reader sucks and the phone does run a little warm. The radio doesn't get as good a signal, but the cameras are better. The performance is really interesting. The CPU performance on older Pixels can still sometimes outperform newer Pixels. That's stupid. But it was charming because it was different, it was competitive, and Google was doing some things that were a little disruptive. Now, Google is selling you a poorer experience at a higher price because why can't we charge $1,200 for a phone if Apple does? If an Apple phone is $1,200, then a Google phone can be $1,200, but that phone is not as good. And it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating to see the popularity of this matter more than the earnest merit of every gadget. Like I can pick up my OnePlus 15, pretty much acknowledge that I think this might be one of the last OnePluses that ever comes to the United States. And it is so much better a phone and daily driver communicator, even with the camera downgrade, than any Pixel could ever be. If you do a lot of things on your phone, man, you would be so much happier with that OnePlus 15, even knowing that the camera probably won't be able to best a Pixel Pro. The OnePlus is just a better overall device, but you're not going to get a lot of creators coming out to say, oh, yeah, I know, competitive in this, and oh, and the battery life, and oh, fast charging. No. We've got to make fast charging sound like it could be dangerous. Did you even think that fast charging could be dangerous? It could be dangerous, guys. What if it's dangerous? Do you have any evidence for that? No, but Apple doesn't use it, so maybe it's dangerous. Google can do the fast charging. They've got to throttle your CPU after 200 charges because their batteries are so substandard. But what if fast charging is dangerous? I've got 20 million YouTube subscribers. I need to tell you that it's less popular. So what if it's dangerous? dangerous. And that's what passes for content. I'm over here like busting my ass to like reach any nerds out there that, I don't know. I get it. You're going to make more money just telling people what they want to hear, not what they probably need or should hear. And that's where we're at. Still hosting this podcast on YouTube, y'all. It's pretty great. There's like no reason to feel like I'm reaching total burnout collapse. It's awesome. From Majestic Moose, at some point, Google will release a better phone than my OnePlus 13. The 2030s aren't that far away. I don't know, Majestic Moose. The phone might be better just in terms of components, but I'll tell you, anytime, at any point, Google releases a phone that will absolutely and practically beat a device like the OnePlus 12, it will arrive at a substantially higher price than what the launch price was for the OnePlus 12, even accounting for inflation. That's the only way that this will ever make sense. And it'll be so long before Google properly supports things like actual real fast charging because their batteries are so cheap. And saying that, a bunch of Pixel fanboys that make their money off of having access to Google products and trips and executives and interviews and early access are going to try and cloud the conversation. Well, but I mean, who even really cares about? And I have wireless charging all over the place to drain my battery even faster. I guess burn out my battery even faster. And that doesn't help people make better purchasing decisions, and it doesn't mean we get better products. If you can't criticize Samsung and you can't criticize Google because your channel depends on that access, then just own that you're a shill. But I don't know. It's easier to send me hateful comments on YouTube than acknowledge that this is a much bigger problem, and it's awful. From Mr. Maug, do you think using MediaTek Dimensity chips would have been a better move than making their own Tensor chip? Yes. Can you imagine like Pixel with a lean skin on it? The Pixel launcher isn't, any kind of radical or groundbreaking UI for a mobile device. But can you imagine that running on a 9400 or a 9500? Like, MediaTek is curb stomping Tensor so much. CPU, GPU, and NPU performance is absolutely embarrassing the Pixel on all fronts. There is no measure of chip performance you can point to where Tensor is in any way competitive, and including radio. Because, man, I can't tell you how much better the reception is on my import MediaTek-powered phone than it is on my native to North American Pixel. How much cooler this phone runs in my pocket doing all the basic average consumer things. It would have been so much better for consumers if Google had developed a partnership with MediaTek. I think 6 years in, I have to rate the Tensor experiment as a fail for now. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe Tensor G6 is gonna rock my world, but I just don't see how it could. I feel like the parts and pieces Google is trying to lay into, the GPU especially, it's going to be another it'll be better than Tensor G5, and it's going to be another significant compromise over buying a Qualcomm or a MediaTek powered phone. And they're doing it because, those components, they need to save money. They need a cheaper GPU. They're going with a terrible solution for that. I just don't get it. So Strazika's Wikazal, Dimensity is amazing. It's so close to Snapdragon nowadays. It's better in terms of CPU performance. I know Orion cores have gotten better, and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 Elite is a very good chip. but MediaTek is neck and neck in GPU performance, just in raw GPU performance. I would still say Snapdragon gets a little more support for games. Games will maybe run a little better on a Snapdragon, but in terms of CPU performance, how MediaTek structured their big core design is better than how Qualcomm. So CPU to CPU, it ain't Qualcomm. It is definitely MediaTek. Strizika Wikazal. So how much more do you pay for a 120 watt charging battery? You know what? Let's look this up real quick, and then we'll wrap up this podcast. I don't know. We want to say Giztop, or let's say Average Dad. Average Dad. And I'm going to look up the Vivo X300 Pro. I'm going to look up the Pro because I think the Pro easily bests the Pixel 10 Pro in every single component spec over even the old. So like the Ultra is definitely a better phone than the Pixel Pro, but the Vivo X300 Pro is a better phone than the Pro Global. So let's go Pro Global. And okay, so I can screen share this. If I import a Vivo X300 Pro, this is going to be a pricey phone. It's going to be $1,266 for 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage. So now let's look up Pixel 10 Pro XL. And something tells me that this will probably be on some kind of crazy sale because the Pixel's just so popular. Yeah, you see, look at this. It's starting from $700, down from $999. So I want to say, let's buy one of these. And we'll go Pixel 10 Pro XL to match the general size. I don't know, Obsidian. And 512 gigs of storage was $1,300. But right now, you can get it with instant trade-in credit, and it's on a sale, and you can get up to cash back, and you can sign up for Google Fi and all these others. But if you get unlocked, $1,319 before trade-in. So I want to show this. I can import the Vivo X300 Pro. There aren't any trade-in deals or anything. I'm getting a global version of the phone, a ROM that isn't full of Chinese spyware because you're so worried about the Chinese spying on you. Vivo X300 Pro, $1,266. Just outright Pixel 10 Pro XL with the same amount of storage, $1,319. So let's see. The Vivo is going to have a better screen. It's going to have a better main camera, a much better telephoto camera. I think the ultra wide is going to be similar. It's going to have a significantly larger battery that charges radically faster. It's going to be a much higher performance chip. And it's going to get better radio reception in the United States on sub-6 5G than the Pixel. I cannot think of a single data point that the Pixel wins, except the Pixel gets more Gemini AI and better call screening. But Vivo has their own call screening. It's not as good, but I don't get scam and spam calls, and I get plenty of warnings on what calls are coming into my phone on the Vivo. It's better. And I'm getting to a point where I actually kind of like the skin. That now that we've kind of updated and we've lost Fun Touch, because Fun Touch was not very fun. But now that we've updated and they've kind of merged all of their operating system skins and everything, I like the Vivo better than the Pixel experience. I think the Pixel experience is getting kind of weirdly cluttered in a way that's not very pretty. So I don't know. Do you spend $60 more on a Pixel 10 Pro XL if you don't have a trade-in? No one should buy this phone at $1,319. This phone right here, this is nowhere near being $1,319 worth of phone, when this phone is $1,266. And I feel like I could take this phone out with me and not have to carry thousands of dollars of photography equipment. This phone actually helps me get my work done better for $60 less than this phone. And I wish more people were looking at, what am I really doing on a phone to spend this much money every month? Like Verizon, with bill credits and a trade-in, and you sign up for a new line of service, you can get this amazing phone for $9 a month. Wow. All you have to do is sign your life over to Verizon. Isn't that amazing? And that's why people will continue to look at this with, not in the merit of the device, but knowing my carrier will give me such a good deal if I switch my line over and port my service and do this trade-in and sign up for this other thing, and I'll still be spending like $60 a month on my cell phone bill, but I'll have a brand new phone that's like $1,000. I don't know. I spend like, what, $250 a year on Mint, and I own a phone that's $1,200 international, and that's good. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm doing okay. So anyway, we should probably wrap this podcast up. I guess to answer your questions, Wikazal, you spend less money to get the faster charging than you do on the Pixel. It's pretty great. Yeah, so Rob Aaron's, the X300 Pro is more expensive now than when I bought it at launch. It was an $1,100 phone in November 2025. And I think if you get the Chinese ROM edition, if you're fine with that, or you want to like flash, it's even cheaper. I know the X300 Ultra Chinese version is the same price as the X300 Pro Global Edition. But I don't know. I don't see X300 Chinese pricing on Average Dad. And Roth Sathi, ooh, that Vivo camera though. Future, it's here. A Pixel starts at 128 gigabytes of storage. That is highway robbery. Correct. 2 Turbo. This is you being a good friend. I talked my friend into importing a Find X9 Pro, and he loves it. If any of these people around you think that they care even in the slightest about mobile cameras, Vivo, Oppo, Xiaomi. That is the beginning, the middle, and the end of every mobile camera conversation. I show people the photos I get on my Vivos, and that pretty much shuts up every iPhone owner around me. And it is not close. And it is immediately demonstrable whenever we're side by side taking photos of our kids at the same event, and I look at their photos, and they look at my photos, and then they put their phones down and ask me to get photos of their kids. One, it is that I'm a better photographer, but two, I'm a better photographer because I understand what I'm doing with that better hardware, which is where we're going to wrap this up right now. Folks, I had a little, for episode 449 of this podcast, I had a little moment where I got to talk about some of the changes coming to the channel, and there was a special announcement at the end where I detailed my book is getting a massive update. I'm in a holding pattern. If you go to Amazon, I was just talking about how much I'm trying to, for my own e-readers, go to open source and not be locked into proprietary bookstores. I still appreciate, as being a smaller writer and content creator, that I have a book on the Amazon Kindle store that is Kindle copy protected. there is a little disconnect there between my philosophy of open ebooks and kind of closing that stuff off. I appreciate that I am a complex human that can sometimes contradict himself. But that book has just received a massive update. So version 1.2.7 of Take Better Photos, Smartphone Photography for Noobs. Actually, I should pull this up while we talk about it. Amazon. Oh, that was dumb. Here, let me just go to Amazon. Now, let me pull up my book. So here it is, my Amazon book, Take Better Photos, Smartphone Photography for Noobs. Originally published back in 2015. This is the 10-year anniversary, and we're now on edition 127. It says the 127th edition, but that's kind of, it's 1.2.7 is how I'm keeping track of what's going on in this. And this is a pretty huge update. It is now 350 pages long. I have gone through and replaced most of the photos in this book, and I was excited because I was in a conversation. I was in a sort of examining other places to publish it. My book was rejected by Kobo. I really, I would love to put this out here as just an open ebook that anyone can just download and share, and that would be awesome. But man, it took so much work to revise this book, and I just want to give it one last push, the shelf life of whatever this might look like. So I wrote back to the folks at Kobo, and they are examining whether or not they want it on their platform. I'm hoping they will change their mind on rejecting it, and I'll have another store. If someone doesn't want to do business with Amazon, I totally appreciate that. I totally understand. You don't want to be on Amazon Prime. I'm not on Amazon Prime anymore. But if you want to do business with another storefront like Kobo, or you're a part of the Kobo Unlimited platform, maybe you could check out the book there. But the reason why I'm really hoping, this is so silly and kind of backwards. The reason why I'm hoping that Kobo will change their mind and approve my book is they have a better platform and program integration with Overdrive. And I would love to see my book, copy protection on it, DRM, all the things that we say we hate. I've put this on my book. But if they go through Kobo for Overdrive, libraries could pick up multiple copies of my book for really, really cheap. And I don't know why that would seem more validating and more real that I'm published. Not that I see my book on a storefront where you can go and buy it, but it means so much more to me if you could find my book at a library and check it out from a library. That, for some reason in my head, that means my book is real. And it's never really worked clearly on Kindle for making that happen, where I could instead send people through Overdrive and through Kobo to say, hey, you could get a license of this book and check it out at your local library. That would make it real. And that's what I would love to see happen, is see a couple dozen copies of my book out at local libraries all over the country. And then you could check it out that way, not spend a dime on it, but not be tied to the Kobo ebook platform or the Kindle ebook platform. I really want that to happen. So I'll keep folks posted, but if you've previously purchased the book on Kindle, if you go through your Kindle app or your Kindle e-reader and update, the update should be there. And it's actually going to take up a little bit less space. This was the other thing I was talking about last week, is where I was really excited. I've been working on better ebook formatting and better management, and the compression that I'm using, I think, is better. So the book is actually smaller, even though it's like 50 pages longer, and I've almost doubled the number of example photos in this book when I'm talking about different photography concepts and techniques. And I've even included a couple of my older editorials from the website talking about phones versus cameras and how to calculate depth of field based on sensor size and some of the nerd math. The images are so much better for demonstrating that stuff. So take better photos, smartphone photography for noobs, currently available on Amazon Kindle because I'm a hypocrite. Hopefully, fingers crossed, please send some energy out into the cosmos that maybe this will arrive on a Kobo ebook store near you. So I think that's going to close us out. From Sue Lynn. Is Canada on the list? I would love to check it out from the Toronto Public Library. So if Kobo can happen, Kobo International has deals with libraries. This could be a way that encourages spread. I don't have any pull with Toronto's city or government or public library system, but if it does show up on Kobo, you could request, hey, can you buy a copy of this book? I would love to check it out. It's real cheap. So we'll see. Folks, we're putting a pin in it. Lots of really big life changes, some really fun content coming to the channel. I maybe accidentally shared a photo of a product that I shouldn't have shared a photo of on the Discord, but I'm really excited to be talking about that. I'm going to have a video out very, very soon on this Quest Style, this amazing little portable DAC amp, Bluetooth, high quality. I just wrapped up some audio on the Odyssey headphones that are blowing my mind. The Fossey video is going to be going out. I just did that Sony cooler, and another company sent out, this is I don't know if it's like Ace Coolie or A Coolie, but these really awesome, super like high power portable fans with like misters built into them. This is like super, super nice. Here, I'm going to blow my mic. Ooh. And this is at like 20% power. Listen to what happens when I go full power. Look at all the dust fly on my desk. Let me turn that off. So I've got a lot of stuff coming to the channel. Awesome. Oof, no, I really do need the dust better in here. So really awesome. There's a big one coming down right there. Boy, this keyboard is super dirty. I'm glad I have an air blowing system to kick this all up in my face. Water blasters and phones and cameras and headphones and fun accessories. Oh my. And I'm glad to have you all along for the ride. So folks, have an amazing week. Do awesome with your technology. Be awesome with your technology. I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. I love you all.